Good morning. Peace to all the guides and goddesses. You're listening to High Frequency Radio. I'm your host, Yusef. It is January 3rd, 2014, broadcasting live from sunny Southern California. What up there, everybody? It's going to be a good show today. I got a real good show lined up for y'all today. I have a special guest today. He goes by the name of Eric John Phelps. He is the author of a controversial book entitled Vatican Assasins. Now, I've had an opportunity, y'all know me. I'm gonna vet my guests. But I had an opportunity to actually get a chance to look at some of Mr. Phelps' material, go on YouTube, watch some videos, and and he is a controversial figure. You Google his name, all types of stuff is going to come up. You're going to see some pros and some cons. But today we're gonna get to it. We're gonna give Mr. Phelps a platform to discuss his political views in his book and some other subjects of interest that I'm sure that we're going to delve into a little bit. So grab you some coffee, sit back, get ready to, delve into this. Okay, Mr. Phelps, you there?
Yes, I am.
Yes, sir. As I was just saying, I was just giving you an introduction. As I said, we got a chance to talk briefly before the show. Someone informed me about you, and I had a chance to check you out. Seems like you're very popular with this controversial book that you put out. I'm reading it. I'm reading it right now. You say what now? Go ahead.
Maybe not popular, but maybe infamous.
Infamous. That is correct. And if there is, the jury's out on it. So I haven't gotten a chance. I don't judge anybody, especially I haven't gotten a chance to really read all their material and get a chance to. But I did watch some videos of you, and I was very impressed with what I saw in the videos. And I've gotten a chance to kind of go through the book a little bit. It's so much material, though. I know you said you've done a book that's 1,800 pages long. Is that correct?
Yes, the third edition of Vatican Assassins is 1,836 pages with 700 pictures and portraits.
Wow. Let me ask you a question. What got you into this? Usually with everybody who gets into this is something personal issue that happens. I know with me, it got me into it as a personal issue and dealing with the police and coming to a realization that I really didn't have any rights or anything, and I started to dig deep and trying to figure out what was going on. But what led you into this area of study? What pushes you into this?
Well, there were three things. The first thing was when I was 10, Kennedy was assassinated. And that was a very traumatic experience for me as a young boy. My teacher that came into my fourth grade classroom there was crying. I had great affection for her, and I thought, what could possibly make this happen to her? And then she said, someone shot the president. Well, that kind of overthrew lots of things, and I remember the LBJ when he took his oath on that Roman Catholicness there, and Air Force One, when he looked over to Valenti there that night of Malta, and they both had little grins on their faces. I thought, there's something wrong here. Johnson looks guilty. So I grew up with that, and I knew that really wasn't resolved. And then after I got saved, came to know Christ as my Savior. I went to Bible college, and I saw this design to replace the Reformation King James Bible with anything but the NIV and so on and so forth. And then I realized it was a different underlying Greek text, and then I found out the Greek text was Pro-Jerome's Latin Vulgate, which is the Jesuit Bible validated by the Jesuit Orders Council of Trent, which then led me to believe, well, the Jesuits and the Vatican are busy overthrowing the Protestant Reformation, and they're overthrowing the Reformation Bible. Could they have been involved in the assassination of Kennedy? And then I later found out with one of my professors in school, Dr. Rembert Carter, who had a class on the Jesuit assassination of Abraham Lincoln. And after that, those three instances, those three issues, the Kennedy assassination, the Lincoln assassination, and the attack on the Reformation Bible, were the three things that drove me to write this book. And I spoke to my father about it, and of course we didn't see eye to eye. My father didn't know the Lord. He wasn't a believer. But he said to me, if you're going to blame the Jesuits for killing Kennedy, GD it, you better write a book about it. I said, okay, then I will. And so I did. And he didn't read it. But
wow.
Those are the issues that brought me to the place to write that book.
Now, my understanding is the Jesuit order is a group of very intellectual men. I had a chance to talk to an ex-Catholic priest, and he was trying to, hipping me. We were sitting there having a discussion about the Bible because he had left the becoming a priest because he fell in love with a nun, believe it or not. Him and a nun had gotten married and they left. But he was telling me the qualifications to become a Jesuit. He said they have to go to some years of college, almost like the PhD level, and then after that they have years of study that they have to engage in order to become a Jesuit. Right. Is that true?
That's correct. After high school, it's 15 years. After 15 years, you can be professed of the third vow. Yeah. Okay,
so we're talking about some very intelligent men. I mean,
absolutely. The most intelligent men in the world as a group. And remember, it's a military order. It's called the Company of Jesus, just like the CIA is called the Company.
Mm-hmm.
Which they founded. It's the Company of Jesus. So it's a military order, and they have consolidated all the knowledge and wealth of information of the world into their hands. In the U.S., there's 28 Jesuit universities, and the capital of the United States, that oversees the White House, is Jesuit Georgetown University.
Yes, even my understanding is the governor of California went to a Jesuit school. Somebody was pointing that out to me. So that's why it kind of sparked my interest a little bit. Now, you mentioned that he had that the Jesuits are responsible for the assassinations of these presidents. And it was my understanding that the presidents were assassinated because they were, messing with the gold, messing with the monetary system and these bankers. Or the Jesuits tied in with the bankers? Or how does that work? How does it all work?
Yes, the Jesuits, the Society of Jesus, is the revived Knights Templars. The Knights Templars ran all the banking during the Dark Ages. And they became so powerful that the King of France called for their suppression, and then Pope Clement V suppressed them in 1312. And the head of the Templars was Jacques de Molay. The de Molay Society is named after him. Well, the Templars were suppressed. They went into hiding. Many of them went to Scotland. But they were revived by Ignatius Loyola, who was a nobleman of Spain. He was a Basque, and he was a member of the Spanish Knights Templars. So here they revived the Knights Templars in the name of the Society of Jesus, but it would be 1,000 times worse. And so the Jesuits, over a period of 400 years, have managed to consolidate all wealth, all financial power, all the gold, all the currencies into their hands. They're in the IMF, they're in the World Bank, they're in Switzerland, so they run it all. Not the Rothschilds. The Rothschilds are nothing more than the lackeys for the Jesuits.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Now,
sure.
Are these people, it's just going to be a pointed question, because obviously if they're Jesuits, they are at least posturing as if they are holy men. In my study, when I study, esoteric information and higher sciences and so forth, do these people, is their agenda one that is for the good of mankind, or is it for its demise? I mean, I guess that would be the ultimate question. If they're consolidating all this power into their hands, what is their purpose? What's the purpose for it, and what is the purpose of humanity? That is there for humanity.
Okay, the purpose of the Jesuit order is twofold. When it was founded in 1534 by Ignatius Loyola in Paris, they decided then, it was later openly stated, that their purpose was to take Jerusalem from the Saracens, the Muslims, and to destroy the Protestant Reformation in Europe, then to revert all nations back to the temporal power of the Pope, which is his claimed right to rule the governments of all nations. And the final play of this is that the final Pope of Rome, controlled by the Jesuits, will be the universal monarch of the world, to rule the world from a revived city of Babylon, and that his image will be placed in the third Hebrew temple in Jerusalem. That's the end goal for the Jesuit order.
Okay, all right, and that's their end goal. Now, let's switch gears. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do this, because I started talking, I'm really supposed to give you the platform. I'm going to give you a platform now, like I told you yesterday, to explain, tell a little bit more about yourself, and go into some things. And we're going to go into some question and answer, because I know that you're very knowledgeable about, because I know we're going to get into this 14th Amendment citizenship. And I'm trying to I want to see how this ties in with the 14th Amendment, because you got a different view on the 14th Amendment than a lot of other people do, that I'm sure that's going to raise a lot of eyebrows, going to probably make my phone lines light up off the hook. But what you have to say about the 14th Amendment. Let's just get into this. Let's get into this real quick. The 14th Amendment. Talk about that real quick, your views on the 14th Amendment.
Okay.
Before you do, go ahead. I'm gonna give you the form. You can talk about 15, 20 minutes. This is what I do with all my guests, so they can become familiar with you, so you can kick out the information, and then we'll talk about it. Okay?
Okay. I was born in 1953 in Oakland, California. I was raised in the North Bay in a little suburb called Terra Hills, in between San Pablo and Pinole. And I grew up there. It was an Irish Catholic, Portuguese Catholic area. It was developed by an Irish lady with the stipulation that every street in the development would be named after Ireland, or an Irish name. So I grew up on 2700 Limerick Road. So I was raised there, and then I graduated from high school at Pinole Valley High School in 1972. I went into the Air Force in the fall of 72. I was stationed in Germany for 3.5 years at Spangdahlem Air Force Base. Met my wife there, and my first wife, and we were married. I came back after I got out of the Air Force in 77. We had 2 sons. Went to Bible college. Went to Baptist Bible College for 2 years in Clark Summit, Pennsylvania. And then I transferred to Lancaster Bible College in Lancaster for 2 years. I graduated in 1981. Shortly after that, my wife divorced me and took my 2 sons from me when they were 5 and 2. And so I decided then that over the issue of the income tax, because I decided then that I would never pay heavy progressive socialist communist graduated income tax ever again. That was probably the issue that resulted in the divorce. And so then I decided, well, I need to learn a trade. So I went into concrete work. I did concrete work for 15 years. I had my own business for the last 6 years. Then I started to get sick, and I was developing some sort of prostate cancer or something, but it was terrible pain down there. So I sold my concrete tools, and I went into alternative medicine. So I got an ozonator and a sauna, and I learned to use ozone in a sauna. I learned to use infrared. I learned ultimately to use hyperbaric chambers. And then ultimately I learned to do ultraviolet blood irradiation, which of course is illegal, quote unquote. And it's the hottest treatment with of an acute infection that you can possibly use, ultraviolet blood irradiation in conjunction with the use of ozone. So I learned all these different modalities, and you learn to use a Rife machine or a frequency machine with laser light. And ultimately got rid of that developing cancer because I had all the immunizations in the Air Force. I had toxic concrete sealants in me. So I was not in good shape. But ultimately I got better. And so I decided to work with people. And I worked with people for another 10 years, helping them with their maladies. And then while I was doing that, I decided that it was time to write the book. So I wrote the book in late 1990s. I published my first manuscript in 1999. I was helped by some dear Mennonite ladies who used to prepare my meals for me and also used to pay my rent while I was writing the book for 3 years. So published my first manuscript in 1999, and 2001 was the second manuscript, and I published my first book in 2001, which was a 600-page Vatican Assassins, and then in 2007 I published my third edition. My second edition was a little correction, some corrections grammatically in it. A former Jesuit, in fact, helped me with the grammatical corrections because he knew that it was true. And then in 2007, I published my third edition, which was 1,836 pages with 760 pictures and portraits. So the book is about the history of the Jesuits. It's from 1534 up into and including 9/11, because I added some things in the third volume on 9/11 to show that the Jesuit order from that time to this has acquired all power, political power, religious power, financial power, and academic power in the world today. And the keystone for the book was their assassination of John F. Kennedy, because John F. Kennedy, even though our first Roman Catholic president, he was truly an enemy of the Pope of Rome because he refused to submit to the temporal power of the Pope. Now, for your listeners, a short definition on this matter. When you look at the Vatican flag, you see two keys. You see a triple crown, which according to canon law means the Pope is Lord of Heaven, Lord of Earth, and Lord of Hell. And then you see two keys that are crossed. One is a silver key and the other is a gold key. It's on a flag of yellow and white, and usually trimmed in gold fringe. Well, the keys, the gold key represents the Pope's spiritual power. And this spiritual power was not given to him by Peter, as they want to tell you. It was given to the Pope of Rome in 606 by a very bloodthirsty emperor in Constantinople whose name was Phocas, Phocas. In 606, he's given his spiritual power, that there's no salvation outside the Catholic Church, and he has the right to have all power over all the souls of men. This is the doctrine of Rome. 150 years later, in 756, he was given what is temporal power. The temporal power is the doctrine that the Pope has the right to rule every political government in the world, that no nation has the right to be self-governing, and therefore Romanism is the greatest enemy against nationalism. So, with this power given to the Pope by Pepin the Great, quote-unquote, in 756, this completes the powers of the two powers of the Pope, which are first his spiritual power and then his temporal power. So I go on to show in my book that the policy of the Vatican, no matter how nice the popes might seem to be, they are absolute and total spiritual tyrants and political tyrants. And any political leader who does not submit to the temporal power of the Pope is to have his kingdom taken away, and that he is to be removed by death if necessary. And this is exactly what happened to John F. Kennedy when the Jesuits followed the moral theology of a very noted Jesuit whose name was Francisco Sarez. Francisco Sarez wrote a book called Des Regi, or Justifies the Regicide of Kings. And so because Kennedy refused to submit to the temporal power of the Pope, and he made this quite clear when he spoke to a group of Protestant and Baptist ministers in Houston in 1960. When he said that no pope would tell him what to do, he was going to be made an example of. And so he was deliberately put into the presidency. Indeed, he refused to submit to the temporal power of the Pope. John F. Kennedy refused to go into Vietnam, according to the great Colonel Fletcher Prouty in his work, JFK. He proves that Kennedy was going to bring all American troops out of Vietnam in 1965. Well, this meant that Kennedy had to go because the war in Vietnam was called then Spelly's War. And that means Cardinal Spellman's War. Francis Cardinal Spellman was the American Pope. And there's a book written on him by John Cooney, written in 1988, titled The American Pope, which I recommend all your listeners to get a copy. Kennedy also refused to continue the Cold War, because as I show in my book, the Cold War was a hoax. The Russian people were never our enemy. The Russian government was controlled by the Jesuits since the Bolshevik Revolution, because the Jesuits, not the Jews, there were certain Jews involved, but the Jesuits ran the Bolshevik Revolution, and evidences of this are two. In 1917, the Bolsheviks do away with the Julian calendar in Russia, and they adopt the Gregorian calendar. The Gregorian calendar was written by a Jesuit named Christopher Clavius. And hence today, nearly every nation in the world is on the Gregorian calendar, and the New Year's celebration of January 1st is nothing but a celebration to the Jesuit rule of the world. So Kennedy was not going to go along with Cardinal Spellman's war. He was going to end it. Kennedy also was behind the printing of, I think it's nearly 5 billion United States notes. Well, as you know, United States notes, there's no interest on them when you use them. But when you use Federal Reserve notes, there is interest that the American people have to pay on to use this war script. And remember, Federal Reserve notes is indeed war script. So Kennedy was against that. Kennedy was against the Federal Reserve Bank. Kennedy also was against the CIA. He said he was going to break the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the winds because of the deliberate loss of the Bay of Pigs invasion, which betrayed all those nationalist Cubans into the hands of Fidel Castro. And Fidel Castro had been trained by Jesuits for 7 years. His advisor was a Jesuit priest named Amando Lorente, and he oversaw the entire Cuban Revolution with the blessing of Allen Dulles and the CIA. So Kennedy was against it. And according to a book titled Ultimate Sacrifice by Waldron, about 1,000 pages, he proves in his book that Kennedy planned to invade Cuba on December 1st, 1963. He was going to take back Cuba for the Cuban people and get rid of Fidel Castro. So therefore, because of his stand on Cuba, and because of his stand on the Federal Reserve, because of his stand on the Cold War, because of his stand on the Vietnam War, Kennedy had to go. And by the way, the reason why it's so important that the Jesuits gave Cuba to Castro, is because Cuba is to be a staging base for a future Muslim invasion from Africa into the East Coast here. And that's why China has a 6,000 vesseled Chinese overseas shipping company that's going to ship their troops over to Cuba as a landing base, and then into Miami, and then into the South. So Kennedy was going to stop this. He would have made it not possible. So they shot him at 12:30 in the afternoon in Dallas. Nobody gets prosecuted except Clay Shaw, who was deliberately protected by the judge, Haggerty, who refused to allow certain evidence to be admitted in the court. Haggerty was a most fanatical Irish Roman Catholic. Clay Shaw was a Knight of Malta, and his personal friend was Louis Mortimer Bloomfield, a Jewish Knight of Malta out of Canada, who he and his brother, Bloomfield brothers, donated lots of money to the Jesuit University there in Nova Scotia, in Halifax. So Kennedy went against the Jesuit power structure, and thereby he went against Cardinal Spellman. Spellman was not allowed to give Mass in the White House. Kennedy refused him entry into the White House. This was outrageous to Spellman. And so Spellman orchestrated his Knights of Malta, men like J. Peter Grace, Henry Robinson Luce, head of Time Life, head of the press really then, Lee Iacocca, who was the head of the Dearborn Division of Ford Motor Company at the time. You have William F. Buckley, the pseudo-conservative, who further helps to cover up. You have Clay Shaw, who is the highest in the CIA there. You have Cartha DeLoach, who's the third in command of the FBI. He's involved in the cover-up of the evidence. You have Claire Booth Luce, who's the wife of Henry Luce. She was the ambassador to Italy under Eisenhower. Eisenhower himself was a Knight of Malta. You have William Casey, who went on to be the head of the CIA. He was a Knight of Malta. He was educated by Jesuits at Fordham University. You have James Jesus Angleton, who was another Knight of Malta. He was the head of the foreign desk, counterintelligence, the foreign desk for Israel and for the Vatican. So you see how the CIA runs the government of Israel for the benefit of the Pope and not for the benefit of the Jewish people living in Israel. And Thomas Kiley Gorman was the Bishop of Dallas-Fort Worth. He was a Knight of Malta also. And all these men were overseen by Jesuit Jean-Baptiste Janssen, who was the Jesuit general at the time, overseeing Paul VI. So I prove all this in my book. No Jesuit wants to debate me. No Roman hierarch wants to talk to me. They don't want to sue me because they know it's the truth. So I put the finger of blame right where it belongs on why they killed Kennedy. I also contacted some of the Kennedy family, gave them a copy of my book, and said, listen, I know the Jesuits killed John F. Kennedy. Something needs to be done about it. Received nothing, no word of anything about it back from them. So then I figured, well, if they killed Kennedy like this, what about Malcolm X? So I go check out Malcolm X, and Malcolm X goes against the Pope's Nation of Islam. The Vatican created the Nation of Islam to ultimately foment race war in this country, and it's Masonic. So the high-level Freemasons, Prince Hall Rite, as well as Scottish Rite, are all controlled by the Jesuit order. So he went against Louis Farrakhan. He went against the false prophet Elijah Muhammad. And so therefore, because he does that, and he says Elijah Muhammad was the father of some 8 children, something like that, to 6 teenage girls, while Elijah Muhammad then throws him out of the Nation of Islam and orchestrates his murder. And according to Malcolm's wife, Betty, she said that the ones who killed my husband were the commanders of the FBI, the high leaders of the FBI, and the leaders of the Nation of Islam working together. So that resulted in her being burned in a fire later on. So the Jesuits are very serious about eliminating any spokesman who's truly a nationalist, who wants to benefit for his people, getting in the way of their design. So the question is now, how about Martin Luther King? Martin Luther King, even though he was put in power by the Jesuits, he begins to become disobedient. So what does he do? Why, he speaks against the Vietnam War. And he says we have no business going there. So what does he do? He's speaking against Spelly's War. And the man who replaced Cardinal Spellman was Terence Cardinal Cook. So in 1968, Terence Cardinal Cook is the American Pope, and he is the one that orchestrates and oversees the murder of King in Memphis, and then blame it on a white man who never had anything to do with it to further the anti-white agitation among the black community, because they want race war, which will justify martial law because it will result in anarchy. And then what about, we have Bobby Kennedy, the same thing. Bobby Kennedy was serious about finding the murder of his brother. So the CIA shoots him there in Los Angeles, and the Los Angeles Police Department, which is also controlled by the Jesuits, but controlled by the Archbishop of Los Angeles. Remember, the archbishops of every city control the police of that city. And the archbishop of every city generally is overseen directly by a Jesuit university, as the one Loyola is in Los Angeles. So the Los Angeles PD suppresses 10,000 pieces of evidence pointing to multiple shooters of Robert Kennedy. And nobody gets prosecuted except this James Earl Ray, and even Dexter King, the son of Martin King, says, we know James Earl Ray didn't do it. We went on another trial, and they won't do that for him. And that's about the last thing you ever hear of Dexter King anymore, when he went against the Pope's white power structure in this country, about the unlawful conviction and incarceration of James Earl Ray. So we have high-level assassinations that I covered in my book, specifically the Kennedy, but I do deal with some of the others, because they were a threat to the Jesuit order's white power structure that runs this country, that runs this de facto military government that was established on March 9th, 1933, by Franklin Damnable Roosevelt. And we've had this de facto military government ever since by virtue of Proclamation 2040 that was approved and confirmed, quote unquote, by the Congress with their Emergency Banking Relief Act. And the first two sections of that act are nothing but an amended form of the Trading with the Enemy Act, which was a World War I statute. So in that Banking Act, they amend the Trading with the Enemy Act, they amend the Federal Reserve Act. So it was a brilliant piece of legislation to further centralize powers in the Federal Reserve and to justify, to consent to, the creation of this de facto military government that's been in place since FDR. So I cover some of these things now in my course that I teach, but I didn't cover that too much in my book because I didn't know about it then. But I go on in my book then to show how the Jesuits were behind the Iran-Contra affair. That William Casey was the Knight of Malta that oversaw it all. I go on to show that the Jesuits were behind the Watergate affair and the impeachment of Nixon. I show how the Jesuits were behind the 9/11 fiasco, when there were no Muslims on those airplanes. The Muslims had no hand in this. The Saudis were party to it, but the Saudis were put in power by Jesuit coadjutors like Winston Churchill and Benito Mussolini, whose advisor was Pietro Tacci Venturi, the secretary of the Society of Jesus. They put the Saudis in power in Arabia because they were Wahhabis, and British intelligence was the one that created Wahhabi Islam. So the Saudis were involved, but the Muslim people never carried out 9/11. They never touched us. And so what they've done is they justified the invasion of Afghanistan on October 7th, 2001, and October 7th is the same day of the Battle of Lepanto in the Mediterranean, when the Knights of Malta and their fleets defeated the Muslim fleets there so that they could open the way, quote unquote, to the Holy Land for all the pilgrims. So the Battle of Lepanto is considered to be the second most important naval sea battle in world history, and it took place on October 7th. Well, we're going to invade Afghanistan on October 7th. So this is a war, this is a crusade led by the Jesuits in control of the military-industrial complex of this empire, centered in the Pentagon. And by the way, the Pentagon was built by a Philadelphia contractor his name was John McShane, and John McShane was a Knight of Malta. So they have it all. They have the military-industrial empire complex. They're waging a crusade now against Islam. I call it the 12th Crusade in my book, particularly against the Shia. The Shia are the ones targeted for destruction because the Vatican cannot organize and fully unite Islam under the Sunnis until the Shia are gotten out of the way. So this is why there will be an invasion of Iran. This is why there will be lots of death among the Shia. I mean, the Shia, for the most part, don't persecute the Jews. You got 20,000 Jews living in Tehran. Well, no, we can't have that. And by the way, the Shia are barred from making any pilgrimage to Mecca or Medina. So it's a crusade to get rid of this offshoot of Islam that was created by the Pope in the 7th century, and this offshoot is Shia Islam, which was never really subordinate to the Vatican. So this is the scenario I paint in my book. I show in my book, and this is why very few white Protestant and Baptist leaders ever asked me to speak in their churches. And I further go on and I attack. Pardon?
No, go ahead and finish.
I further go on and I attack the whole New Right movement. I call it the fascist New Right. This is Fox, this is Hannity, this is Bill O'Reilly, all those Irish Catholics, because they're busy driving all the white people into New Right fascism in preparation for the military dictator. And when I came out and said Ronald Reagan was the worst president that ever disgraced this country, because he was the one who formally recognized the sovereign state of Vatican City in 1984, and therefore opening up diplomatic relations with that sovereign nation state of 109 acres in Rome. When he did this, this meant that the Vatican could formally send an ambassador here, a papal nuncio, and tell the president what to do. So he was the worst. And when I say this in these white churches, they want to run me out. But it's the truth, so they don't invite me. So nonetheless, what we have here is we have this movement to polarize the races. We got to teach the black folk to hate the white folk. We got to teach the white folk to be desperate, and we got to run into the arms of the right-wing fascists, and then we can fight back. So one of my purposes is to warn white people, don't you do that, because what we're going to get is we're going to get total gun confiscation. We're going to get right-wing fascism, just as Hitler outlawed gun ownership in 1935 with his Nuremberg laws. They're going to outlaw it here. And then once you do that, then we can have a military dictator for all the white people that are desperate now. And then ultimately it's going to be led by the Department of Homeland Security. That's what I call it. Not Homeland, but Homeland. And then they'll start their roundups to send to the camps because they used the black leadership that was Masonic to start race war in every major city. So now we can have our six-sided enemy. It's going to be all the blacks, all the Jews, all the communists, all the homosexuals, all the Muslims, and all the alien invaders. That's what's going to be rounded up and go to the camps, in addition to heretics and liberals like myself. So that's the kind of the essential part of the book, and this is what I do on my radio station.
Wow. You got a radio station. Yeah, go ahead and give your radio station. Go on and plug yourself where people can hear you speak at.
Okay, I have 24/7 World Radio, and you can just log on to that. All my broadcasts are free to listen to, so you can listen to the broadcasts, and I'm on from 10 to 12 every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I'm on Liberty Radio Live from 5 to 6 on Monday and Wednesday, usually.
All right. Okay, now you done said some very inflammatory things. Okay, I want to go back to what you said earlier about the Nation of Islam
Sure.
being, because the Nation of Islam is not going to want to hear that they were created by the Vatican. Are you saying that correct? That the Nation of Islam was created by the Vatican? Okay.
Black Freemasonry.
Okay, now I can see the Freemason connection to the Nation of Islam. I do see that, the bow ties and a lot of things that they do. But let me just ask you this, and I did. There is, and I put this in the chat room where Louis Farrakhan made a public apology to Malcolm X's family, the Shabazz family, because of his part that he may have played indirectly in the assassination of Malcolm X. So I put that link in there so people can watch that and see that, yes, that was an actual thing. The Shabazz family feels like that he was responsible for Malcolm X's assassination. So that is something I see you on point with that. But to actually say that the Nation of Islam was started by the Vatican, I'm not seeing. Is this for race war purposes, and why a race war? What's the reason for that? I'm not seeing it.
Okay. The reason for the race war, I'll deal with that in the other question later. The reason for the race war is to weaken both the white and the black races in this country, to facilitate an easy invasion for our Sino-Soviet Muslim invasion that's in the process of being planned and carried out.
Okay. All right. So the purpose of this, I guess, ultimately is the subjugation of all people.
Correct.
That's
right.
So
everybody loses.
Now, I read a book by William Cooper. I'm sure you're familiar with him. Was any of his research on point? Because he kind of had these. Yeah, because it seems like all the people who were really on point, they end up dead in some shape, form, or fashion. But he had some powerful information. He had these alternative 1, alternative 2, and alternative 3. But they had to reduce the population of the planet. They were going to target gays, blacks, and Hispanics. Where they were going, all these different things, the food and the educational system and all this. And all this is to ultimately subjugate us. Now, let me just get into some things then. Let's
deal with the Nation of Islam if we can. Just deal with that.
Go ahead.
Okay, the Nation of Islam was founded out of legitimate grievances. I won't deny that. But what you do is, if you want to move a people to get you to do what you want them to do, if you're a white power structure working for the Pope, is you create a legitimate grievance, and then the solution to that legitimate grievance benefits me. Okay? So that's what they did with, for example, the Black Code, Jim Crow. All the Jim Crow laws, you know who passed those? Southern white Freemasons working for the Jesuits. Bull Connor, who was involved in that riot down there, or that attack on the blacks when they were demonstrating there down in Birmingham, Alabama, high-level Freemason. Nobody tells you that. Masonic Lodge agitates the races against one another so as to justify the outcome that will benefit them as they're working for the Pope. The Civil Rights Movement. Who did that benefit? It benefited the Vatican. It didn't benefit the black people. The black people have suffered because of the Civil Rights Movement. Their families have been decimated. 70% of all blacks are born now illegitimately. That wasn't the case in 1960. So the Civil Rights Movement, and furthermore, the Civil Rights Movement was passed by Congress out of the Commerce Clause. The Commerce Clause, regulating vessels in commerce. So that benefited the white power structure. So we can get all the blacks now in debt. We can give them all credit cards. We can give them all the same stuff that further benefits us. And we can further draft them all and send them all to fight the Pope's Crusades. So the Nation of Islam, and Malcolm X said this, he said, why do you go fight in the Pacific when we have this very problem right here of being persecuted here? So there was a legitimate grievance, but it was exploited by the high-level black Freemasons in the Nation of Islam to then ultimately justify this radical agenda that is not friendly to whites. And they definitely don't want to have a nation here. Because every black leader that has been involved in calling for racial separation to nationhood or any Back to Africa movement has been killed or run out of the country, including Marcus Garvey. So the Jesuits don't want that. They want forced miscegenation. They want integration. They want welfare, to build huge black communities in all the major cities. They don't want these young men to have black fathers so they can be raised rebellious and without any restraint, so that they can be incited against the white man to then carry out the black-on-white race war that will justify the Department of Homeland Security with its over 1 billion rounds that are hollow points, which are illegal in war, to be used against not only blacks but the whites. And the high Masonic black leaders will be involved in leading this.
Wow. Well, let me ask you this. Okay, because the Pope, let me get to the Pope. Now, the Pope recently, this new Pope, he instituted this thing where he eliminated immunity for the public officials. Is that of any significance, or is that just a farce? I'm sure you've heard of it. You know,
yeah.
What is your position on that?
That's a farce. Remember, the Vatican always has, this is how they always operate. The Vatican has an open policy, but it's false. They have a secret policy. That's a true one. For example, we have the war in Afghanistan, the war in Iraq. Pope John Paul II comes out and says he's against the war in Iraq. We're against this war. The fact of the matter is, his Archbishop in New York, Edward Cardinal Egan, with his American branch of the Knights of Malta, they were behind the control of the American intelligence community that carried out 9/11 that ultimately resulted in the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan. They have a secret design. Their outward policy is false. We're against the war, or we're going to remove immunity. That's nonsense. They had to do something because in Ireland said the bishops and the archbishops will be subject to the same laws as the people of Ireland. And that resulted in the dismissal of the papal nuncio to Ireland. So those Irish Catholics are fed up with the priests and the bishops being immune from their laws. And so they try to repair that among their Irish Catholic peoples, and that's why the Pope came out with that. But remember, the Pope, quote-unquote Francis I, and I say he's named after Francis Xavier, not Francis of Assisi. The Pope Francis I Bergoglio, he's a Jesuit. The three most powerful men in the world.
He is a Jesuit. He is a Jesuit. Yeah.
He's a Jesuit.
He is a Jesuit.
So that Jesuit Pope is subject to Adolfo Nicholas, the Jesuit general. And Adolfo Nicholas was named after Adolf Hitler. Adolfo Nicholas is a top-notch martial artist. He speaks some 7 or 8 languages. The guy's a warrior. And he's advised by Peter Hans Kolbenbach, the former Jesuit general for 25 years. So you got 3 most powerful men in the world. They're all Jesuits.
Wow. Well, let me ask you another question, okay, because you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier in your conversation about the separation of the races, and I want you to give clarity on that. You are a proponent of the races separating. I want to make sure I'm using the correct terminology that you use. And because we on this show, we talk about it, we see that the oppression that goes against us, we feel like, hey, integration didn't work out for us. I think most of us are starting to see that, integration did not work. It just destroyed our families. It destroyed our economy. It destroyed everything about us. What is your position on the separation and nationalization? Because actually we got a show talking about nationalization. What is your position on that?
My position is this. It's biblical. It's based in Genesis. The Lord created the 3 separate races, the basic 3 separate races, the whites, the blacks, and the Asians, the Middle Easterners, from 3 sons of Noah. Shem, the Middle Easterner, the Asian, Ham, the black, and Japheth, the white. And so the Lord created the races for the purpose of keeping mankind separate. Because when there was only one race, and it wasn't white, by the way, there was only one race from Adam to Noah, in 1,656 years, it had all united against God. They had one common race, they had one common language, and they had one common landmass because there were no continents at the time. And in Genesis 11, we have the Lord, so Nimrod, we have the black Antichrist of the Old Testament. King Nimrod out of Babylon, what's he do? He unites the races into the plains of Shinar to build in a great, big, huge commercial enterprise. Sound familiar? So he's uniting the races under commerce to build a tower unto heaven, quote unquote. Well, the Lord comes down and he institutes the languages. He scatters the peoples by their languages, so he gives to the different races different languages. Still, this is not enough. So in Genesis 10:25, we read, in the days of Peleg was the earth divided. Then the Lord created the continents. He divided the earth into the 7 continents we see today. So what he's done is he's created the races, the languages, and the continents to divide mankind, keep mankind separate, because this is the best economy for fallen man in Adam. We are not to unite. We are not to unite racially, linguistically, geographically. All empire builders are bloody murderers. So I am completely for the separate, and I'm not for segregation, because when you have segregation, you then oppress that culture that you've segregated. I'm not for that. Typical example are the Jewish ghettos. You separate the Jews, put them in the ghettos, and you oppress them in all the Roman Catholic countries. Same way with the blacks. You separate them, and then you oppress them in any country where there's another race running it, particularly white countries, because there aren't any black communities in any Asian countries. And so I'm not for segregation. I am for racial separation, which gives respect to any other race that you're separating from, but claiming the right that you have the right to preserve your own race and your language and your heritage and your culture. And so once you have racial separation, then the next is called a nationalism. You need a geographic place to live. You have to have boundaries and borders. And in that country, you decide that no white man can own 1 square foot of ground in this new black nation. That's what it's going to be in my white nation. Not one black man can own a square foot of ground in my country. It's for white people. Black men have their nation, their black nation. No white man can own anything there. No Asian can own anything there. No Hispanic can own anything there. It's for black people. So we separate racially under nationhood. We have a unique language, culture, and history, and then we preserve it. Race mixing, miscegenation, integration destroys all that. And the great Reggie White said the same thing. Reggie White said integration has destroyed the black community. And it was not long after that Reggie White was killed. So That's my position on racial separation of nationhood.
That is interesting. Let me go into one more subject, the 14th Amendment. Okay. Because I know everybody's listening, is going to listen to this. Hey, what? You are saying that the 14th Amendment is a good thing. Now, our position on the 14th Amendment is, and I've done research into this myself. You know, when you get into the historical aspects of the 14th Amendment, the Supreme Court says the 14th Amendment was to give black people rights. You know, prior to the 14th Amendment, black people didn't have any rights. Still, with the 14th Amendment, in my opinion, we have second-class citizenship. When you look in the Constitution, prior to the 14th Amendment, everywhere you saw the word citizen in the Constitution, that's with a capital C. And after the 14th Amendment, everywhere you see the word citizen, it is with a small c, which denotes a proper noun and a common noun. And in my opinion, I have to say opinion because this is not expressly stated in the Constitution, that the 14th Amendment allows corporations to be citizens because it's been broadly construed as such, and, you know, the attorneys are using that as such. But what is your position on the 14th Amendment and the significance of the 14th Amendment? I'd like to get some clarification on that.
Okay, I'll give a succinct statement, and then I'm going to read you a couple quotes.
Okay.
The 14th Amendment, after the war between the states, after the war of annihilation of the white Protestant and Baptist Southern people, was intended by the radical red Republicans, because the Republicans have never been the friend of the black man. The intent of the radical red Republicans was to reverse the origin and character of American citizenship to make U.S. citizenship, or citizenship of the United States, citizenship of the United States national, and state citizenship subordinate to this national citizenship. That was its purpose. And when you reverse the origin and character of citizenship, you thereby reverse the origin and character of the government. And so what they did was, with the 14th Amendment, is they laid the foundation to centralize power in Washington, as is patterned after the Vatican. The Vatican City is the capital. All the nations of the world are nothing more than provinces to the Vatican City. All the governors, all the kings, all the presidents, all the dictators are mere lackeys, the Pope of Rome, because they're ruling their countries as mere Roman provinces for the Caesar, for the papal Roman Caesar in Rome. So they couldn't do this here until they would centralize power in Washington by virtue of reversing the origin and character of American citizenship. So this is what they did with the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment was not only for blacks, it was for whites also. I'll read the quote to you that I have on that. So when they did this, they lowered the white man to an inferior status by creating by broadening, that's the word they use, broadening and enlarging the de jure citizenship into national citizenship. But it included the blacks and the Chinese and the Asians. So that whites, blacks, and Asians were also called American freemen by Justice Stephen Field in the Slaughterhouse decision, by Justice John Marshall Harlan in Maxwell versus Dow of 1900, and by Harlan again in Downs versus Bidwell of 1901 in their dissents. They used the term American freemen. So white men, black men, Asian men were all termed American freemen because they had a broadened and enlarged de jure citizenship of the United States. It's still de jure. It's still constitutional. Even though the 14th Amendment was probably never really ratified, it was declared ratified on July 28, 1868. Nonetheless, it's still de jure citizenship. And in that de jure citizenship, every citizen of the United States, I didn't say U.S. citizen, I didn't say United States citizen. That comes in 1933. Every citizen of the United States, as that term is used in the 14th Amendment, has the right to due process of law. And that due process of law is a civilian due process of law on a state level in the 14th and on a national level with the Fifth Amendment. So when you hold de jure private American citizenship, you being a citizen of the United States and not a U.S. citizen, you have the constitutionally protected right to a civilian due process of law on a federal and a state level. Section 1 of the 14th Amendment protects that right. Even though I don't like national citizenship, nonetheless, it's not a new citizenship. In the case called Colgate versus Harvey in 1935, the Supreme Court tells you there that the 14th Amendment did not create national citizenship. And that word create is in italics. It didn't create national citizenship. So therefore, since the 14th Amendment didn't create another citizenship, it's an enlarged, de jure, original citizenship of the United States. And since it's de jure, since it's protected by the Constitution, and since every judge has taken an oath to uphold the Constitution, they are really bound by the Constitution to give you a civilian due process if you are indeed a private citizen of the United States, and you can prove it with prima facie evidence, for which reason I give my course. So that's my position on the 14th Amendment. Now, let me give you a quotation here.
Okay, yeah, well, you say you have some citations of authorities to support all of this. Am I correct?
Oh, yes. Oh, sure. See,
and
because
you give
for years,
us a couple.
For years I believed it's like you did. The 14th Amendment was the problem. I was waiving privileges and immunities of 14th Amendment citizenship. I was filing a release in the county courthouse. That's not it.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. This is the problem. We in the courtrooms, and these, first of all, it is my contention these are not Article 3 courts. These are Article 1 legislative tribunals or commercial courts or territorial courts. It is obvious to everyone that they don't follow any type of process in the courtroom. Right. Okay. Right. Everybody, this is undisputable.
Let us go there after I deal with my couple quotations on the 14th.
Okay, go ahead.
That's the topic I got to deal with. Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. We read in the Constitutional View of the War Between the States by Alexander Stephens, who was president of the Southern Confederacy. He says here that the ultimate object, much less have they acted in anything done by them up to this time, upon any claim of the actual consummation of that object, which we have seen, is consolidation and empire. The purpose of the 14th Amendment was ultimate, complete centralism and empire. That's what he said. So the 14th Amendment indeed centralizes power in Washington, and it provides the foundation for the de facto empire that will be established by FDR on March 6th, 1933, and then validated by the Congress on March 9th. Then he's going to reestablish it with another proclamation on the same day on March 9th, a proclamation 2040. So the 14th Amendment provides the basis for the empire, but the de jure constitutional government was still in effect. And I show this in that we're still at common law. We still had our great Anglo-Saxon common law that sprang from the reading of the Bible, of the ancient, in the old country of Hibernia, which was Ireland, and then later Britannica, which before it was conquered by William the Conqueror, that son of a prostitute and plunderer of the English people in 1066. So we still have a wonderful common law. We still have a wonderful common law process. All the courts had civilian flags in them. None of them were trimmed with gold fringe, and whenever they proceeded against anybody, it was all in his upper and lowercase name. It was not the all-capital letter name. So we had a true de jure due process of law on a federal and a state level, protected by the Constitution. Now, the other thing I want to, my other sort of quotation is here in the purpose of the 14th Amendment. We're going to read Blaine's Political Discussions, and that was published in 1887. And here is what he wrote on page 63. Now remember, James G. Blaine was a radical red Republican. He's called the Continental Liar from the state of Maine. Okay? He was the one who escorted James Garfield, the Bible-believing Protestant and a minister, who could write Latin with one hand and Greek with the other hand at the same time. We're going to escort James Garfield, who said he refused to submit to the foreign power of any foreign monarch, which was a repudiation of the Pope. We're going to escort James Garfield into the train station in Washington City there, and then this Roman Catholic assassin is going to shoot James Garfield in the back as escorted there in place by James Blaine. So James Blaine is a wicked, horrible sinner working for the Vatican to get rid of anybody that would resist his power. So we see here in Blaine's work on page 63, in the first place, we act that they will agree to certain changes. The southern states would agree to certain changes in the Constitution of the United States. And to begin with, we want them to unite with us in broadening the citizenship of the Republic. Not create a new one, we're going to broaden it. The slaves recently emancipated by proclamation and subsequently by constitutional amendment have no civil status. They should be made citizens. We do not, by making them citizens, make them voters. We do not, in this constitutional amendment, except to force them upon the southern white man as equals at the ballot box. So we'll do that with the 15th Amendment. But we do intend that they shall be admitted to citizenship. See, admitted to citizenship, not created citizens. Admitted to citizenship. That they shall have the protection of the laws, that they shall not, any more than the rebels shall, be deprived of life, liberty, or property, quote unquote, without due process of law. And that they shall not be denied, quote unquote, the equal protection of law. Now here's what he says. In making this extension of citizenship, it's an extension of the old de jure citizenship, so it's going to be just as de jure as the first one. In making this extension of citizenship, we are not confining the breadth and scope of our efforts to the Negro. It is for the white man as well. We intend to make citizenship national. And as you know, the maxim of the law, the intent of the lawmaker is the law. So it is. The 14th Amendment was for both the whites and the blacks, but still it was an extension of citizenship, a broadening of the old de jure citizenship, and therefore it's still de jure citizenship, where you, as a private citizen of the United States, have the right to a civilian due process of law. If you have the right status, if you can prove you're a private citizen of the United States and not a U.S. citizen. Okay, so we covered the 14th Amendment. Now, you want to go to the court thing? Yusef?
Yeah. Let's go to it.
Oh, okay. All right. So here's what we have. I teach this in my course. By the way, I'm having a course January 17th and 18th here in Myerstown. I have 2 more slots that are available. $1,750 for the course. And I will be having a black gentleman present for the course who's probably the most erudite, notorious individual dealing with the courts in this country. He's anonymous. He never gives his name. Travels on several passports. And anybody who comes here will have the opportunity to meet this man. Okay, I have 2 spaces left. Now, with regard to what the Jesuits are doing now is they're wanting to make an empire out of the old republic. So they have the 14th Amendment in place. 1871, they incorporate the city of Washington, D.C., so they have their centralized city. By the way, they pulled the same thing in Japan. They used the American gunboats of Commodore Perry to open up Japan. Then they used the American Gatling gun to kill all the samurai. And then the Jesuits consolidated all power into Tokyo. The Jesuits killed Emperor Komi, who didn't want any of those white devils coming back to Japan. They killed him at 36 years of age. And so his son, who's about 12 years of age, Emperor Meiji, becomes Emperor of Japan for some 40 years. Well, what they did was they centralized all power in Tokyo. They make the shogun, who's the protector of the emperor, resign. So there's no more Tokugawa shogunate to get in the way of the Jesuits. And now they have an emperor that's mere putty in their hands, so that they can make an empire out of Japan that will be used in World War II to gather all the gold out of the Far East, to kill off all the Protestant missionaries in the Far East, and then to ultimately take that gold, General Yamashita's gold, and send it to New York and ultimately Europe for the creation of the Pope's revived Roman Empire. But they used Japan to make an empire out of Japan, centralize power in Tokyo, and then they're going to make an empire out of America and centralize power in Washington. So what do? What's one of the first things they do? From 1865 to 1890, they're going to conduct their damnable Indian War of the Great Plains. And the first Treaty of Iniquity is the Treaty of, in 1868, the Treaty of Fort Laramie. And the Treaty of Fort Laramie will be negotiated by the first Roman Catholic General of the Army, Philip Sheridan. Philip Sheridan is a tyrant, and he is advised by his right-hand man, the Jesuit Pierre de Schmidt. The Jesuit Pierre de Schmidt pretended to be friends of the Indian nations and Indian chiefs, only to betray them and oversee their annihilation in the 25-year War of Annihilation against the Indian nations, building an empire from sea to shining sea. Okay? 14th Amendment's in place. The 14th Amendment now can protect the cartel capitalist corporations because we know the decision in the Santa Clara case of 1884-1885 that a corporation was called a person under the 14th Amendment, and therefore the 14th Amendment is going to be a protection for the corporations as never intended by the people who were behind the 14th Amendment in the first place. So the Jesuits have very cleverly and stealthily brought in 14th Amendment protection to the cartel capitalist corporations, the Vanderbilts and the Morgans and the others, running the railroads, running the steel industry. Because what we have to have is we have to have monopolies. We have to have cartel corporations to build the war machine. Because we're going to need ships. We're going to need tanks. We're going to need guns. And so we're going to have these cartel capitalist corporations with no real competition to then give them our military contracts to build our war machine for us, for this empire. And the empire of America is going to be used to restore the Pope's temporal power around the world in every war, beginning with the Spanish-American War. So they're building their empire. And the Jesuits are building their empire in 1908. They create the Bureau of Investigation, which I call the Holy Office of the Inquisition in America. 1924, it's going to be called the FBI. And the FBI is created by executive order. And that's never voted in as a law by the Congress. And it's highly opposed by certain patriotic congressmen. And so the Bureau of Investigation is created later, and it's created by, and the first head of it is a Roman Catholic, Charles Bonaparte. So they have their inquisitor, they have their Holy Office of the Inquisition, and it's pretending to be justified by going after Bonnie and Clyde and John Dillinger, and all the while J. Edgar Hoover, that sodomite, 33rd degree Freemason, he's busy protecting the mafia. He's busy going to the Stork Club with Frank Costello and these other sinners. So he's busy protecting the Pope's Italian Roman Catholic mafia until he can no longer do it, and so he has to come out and be against it. But the purpose is in 1908, they create the Bureau of Investigation. In 1915, they create the Second Ku Klux Klan, which is Masonic. And they're going to create also the ADL in 1915 or so by blaming the murder of a little white girl in Atlanta on a Jew. And so they're busy creating all these little entities. You're going to create the NAACP, run by nearly a white man, W.E.B. Du Bois. He didn't create it, but he was one of the leaders, and he was a high-level Freemason. And so we're going to create the NAACP, led by essentially white men, to use the black man for our purposes, namely forced miscegenation and a couple other reasons. So we're creating all these entities in the early 1900s, and so now we're also going to enter into the Second 30 Years' War, which is from 1914 to 1945, and that is for the annihilation of white Protestant Prussia. And we're going to use, now we've got all the black GIs, we got them, they're citizens now, we're going to draft them, and we're going to send them over to Europe to kill these white Protestant Germans for the benefit of Rome. And they distinguish themselves as great fighters. So we're going to use the American military now to create, with these new enemies of the Pope, to use them to fight the Papal Crusades. Well, World War I ends, they leave the Trading with the Enemy Act in place, that statute, and then they decide they have a plan to steal everything. They're going to steal all the property, all the terra firma, all the real estate. They're going to steal all the labor, and they're going to steal all the businesses. How are they going to do this? Well, we're going to, first of all, use the Federal Reserve Bank to inject all kinds of credit into the economy. We're going to create wealth. Oh, yeah. And we're going to have what's called the Roaring Twenties. And during the Roaring Twenties, by the way, we'll have a little amendment that's going to outlaw alcohol, which is an unbiblical thing to do because the Bible never forbids the drinking of alcohol. And so we're going to have prohibition. And during prohibition, this will hugely build the Pope's Mafia. So we're going to build the Mafia, and we're going to use our Knights of Malta Knights of Malta, the American branch, was started in 1927 here. And we're going to use one of our foremost Knights of Malta, John J. Raskob, to encourage all the American farmers to invest in the stock market that the Jesuits control. So what happens is, in October of 1929, they crash the market. Winston Churchill is there enjoying the show. The chief short seller is Roman Catholic Knight of Malta, Joe Kennedy, that sinner. And so when they do this, none of the businesses can make their margin calls and they all go broke. In 1929, that very same year, in February, the Vatican is given back its temporal power because it was taken from, temporal power was taken from the Pope in 1870 by Victor Emmanuel II, the first king of Italy. Victor Emmanuel said, I will have temporal power. Pope, you can have spiritual power. They assassinated him for that. But the Vatican gets back its temporal power in 1929 by way of Benito Mussolini. And so they execute the Lateran Treaty. Part of the terms of the Lateran Treaty is that the Pope is going to be given, nearly $100 million as reparations for losing his temporal power. Well, this is in February of 1929. You know what he's going to do with that money? What the Jesuits are going to do? They're going to take all that money, and after 1929, when now the stock market goes crash, they're going to buy up everything in New York. So they bought now all the stock market with this money for pennies on the dollar. The Jews are also going to lose. They lost big in this too. So the Jews are sufferers because of this. And now the depression gets worse and worse. So that by 1932, it's in the deepest, most terrible part of the Depression. Remember, the Great Depression that was from 1929 to 1939, generally speaking, resulted in the death of 10 million Americans. And you're not going to be taught that in any major university. They died through starvation, malnutrition, suicide. It was a horrible time. And so in 1932, the Federal Reserve Bank in New York tells Herbert Hoover, you know, what you need to do to solve this crisis, this emergency, is you need to invoke emergency war powers. Herbert Hoover refuses to do it. They want him to do this on March 3rd, 1933, the day before he leaves office. On March 4th, FDR comes to power, this 32nd degree Freemason, this creature of Rome, this apostate Episcopalian Protestant, made famous and given back his political career by Al Smith, the governor of New York, that night of Columbus, aided and abetted by that Knight of Malta, Nicholas Brady, who financed Jesuit novitiate over here in Warrensville. FDR will come to power, and on March 4th, he warns the American people that I will invoke the war powers, my emergency powers, as though I'm fighting against a foreign foe. In other words, he's going to war. In other words, the government's going to go to war. And on March 6th, he declares Proclamation 2039. In Proclamation 2039, he is invoking the war powers. He is addressing this emergency banking issue because people are going to the banks and they want to get the gold. It's their gold. FDR calls them hoarders. So to stop this hoarding, I'm implementing this Proclamation 2039 out of my war powers. But Congress doesn't validate that proclamation until 3 days later. But on this day, on March 6th, the reason why he did this was so that when the Proclamation 2039 would be confirmed and approved 3 days later, it would not be considered a criminal act. So what he did was, on March 6th, 1933, when he put forth this Proclamation 2039, he became Augustus Caesar. He became no longer the President of the United States. He became the Commander-in-Chief. The flag that would be flown in the Oval Office, in the vaginal Oval Office of the Virgin Mary, that's what it is, taking its statutes from Georgetown Jesuit University, which includes the Patriot Act now. What he's going to do is he's going to now steal, he's going to claim all property as booty. On sea it's called prize, as you know. On land it's called booty. And so what he's going to do, his March 6th proclamation, is he is seizing as booty all registered property in every county of every state as property of the new de facto military government. He is going to seize all the property registered in the states as people are registered property with the birth certificate. So he's going to seize all labor as property of the federal government. And he's going to seize every business, because all these businesses have their corporate charters registered with the Secretary of State in every state. So all the property there reflected by the corporate charters have also been seized by the de facto military government. On that day, March 6, 1933, the Jesuits, with their conqueror, their Masonic conqueror, FDR, took it all. 3 days later, after Congress is in emergency session, they're going to approve and confirm this grand theft with the Emergency Banking and Relief Act. Emergency Banking and Relief Act. None of them are going to read it. They confirm and approve the Emergency Banking Relief Act, which confirms the previous proclamation, any proclamation going back to March 4th, the day FDR took office. So now what we're under as of March 9th, 1933, is we are under a state of national emergency and war. And that's why every court is not a legislative court. Every court is an executive court, sitting in equity for the benefit of the conqueror. And that's why the flag is trimmed in gold fringe and has the eagle clutching the globe, which is the symbol of the president as commander-in-chief. What they did was, judicially speaking, they reduced the judiciary to being subordinate to the chief executive, exactly as the way it is in England. The judiciary in England, the King's Bench, is subject to the King. It's not a separate branch of government. That's what they did here on March 9th, 1933. So now they stole everything. Now we're under emergency powers. Then what FDR is going to do is he is going to steal all the gold with H.R. 192. He's going to take it as property, because now that gold now is booty for the conqueror. And according to Dr. Peter Beater, he has in his audio letter, he was a Roman Catholic attorney in Washington in the 70s, he tells us that FDR gave all legal title of our gold to the Federal Reserve. So the two most powerful men as a result of Proclamation 2040, the President of the United States, the Secretary of Treasury. The Secretary of Treasury controls the comptroller of the currency, and it has much to do with anybody who knows something about accepted for value. All right, so now they have all this power, they have all the property, they've instituted their military government as they did during the Reconstruction. March 9th, 1933 is the second Reconstruction. And so with that, they have their powers now, and that's why no president will do away with Proclamation 2040, and no Congress will ever repeal the Emergency Banking Relief Act, because that is the law in this country, not the Constitution. The Constitution only serves as a piece of advice to the de facto military government on the federal level and the de facto military governments on the state level, they being subordinate to the conqueror in Washington. I hope I wasn't too wordy.
That's you said a whole lot of stuff there. Now you saying these are executive, these are military courts basically, and I've seen that many times before. These are military courts. The flag in the courtroom, sitting in equity. Go ahead.
That's right. Let me be real careful about that.
All right.
The Jesuits made this real tricky. They are constitutional courts. When I was in court with a couple back last December in Kansas City, Missouri, as you're walking into this huge temple of the courtroom, which they designed so that no shooters could shoot anybody there. It's a very magnificent edifice. Upstairs in the second section of the third floor, so are all the courtrooms. But as you go up, it's written in the granite there, Article 3 of the Constitution creating the judiciary, the Supreme Court judiciary. So what these are constitutionally created courts. But because of March 9th, 1933, and also because of the Erie Railroad decision and the U.S. versus Carolyn Products decision, both handed down on April 25th, 1933, because of those two decisions doing away with common law process and common law rights as protected by the Supreme Court, All these courts are now emergency powers courts, emergency war powers courts, and because of the doing away of the common law, they are now sitting in equity. But it's for the benefit of the commander-in-chief. And what's happened is now the Congress is sovereign. The Congress is sovereign because all U.S. citizens are nothing more than integers in commerce, and the Congress has the absolute power, unlimited power, in regulation of commerce. It can pass any statute. The other thing is Congress has the unlimited power because the states, you can love this, the states have been reduced to conquered territories. They are territorial courts. That's right.
Yeah, you're saying the same thing I say all the time, but go ahead. You're just saying it in another way. But go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so the states are nothing more than conquered territories, and so that's why the Internal Revenue Code applies to states, territories, and provinces in an equal fashion. So they reduce everything.
This is why you should read the Libra Code, too. Am I correct?
Well, yeah. Why, absolutely. And so they've been reduced to conquered territories, and this now brings into play the Supreme Court case of Downs versus Bidwell of 1901.
Mm-hmm.
In that case, I'm sure as you know, the Supreme Court said that the power of the Congress to legislate for the territories is absolutely and totally unlimited. And Harlan, in his dissent, goes crazy and says, this is nuts. He said, what we have here is essentially two governments. One government is limited by the Constitution. The other government is unlimited and can do anything it wants to. Well, what we have now is only one government as of 1933, this unlimited Congress. And so what is Congress? Congress is a parliament. The British Parliament can pass any statute they want. They're not limited by anything. Congress is now a British Parliament. You're
talking about public and private. That's what it sounds like. You're talking about public and private. They have complete dominance over the public.
Over the public, because the public was created on March 9th, 1933.
That's correct.
The public that we know it. So public policy only applies to United States citizens that are property of the federal government in commerce and that are rebels and belligerents living in occupied territories.
Now, how do we get out of that? Okay, now we all in agreement. Yeah, we all in agreement on that. And what everybody wants to know is how do you get out of that? That is what everybody's been trying to do. Everybody got these processes, and you know about them not letting people file the UCC-1s anymore. But how do you get out of this commercial monopoly board? Because that's essentially what it is. The monopoly game was created in 1938. It was created before that, but Parker Brothers got it out in 1938, and essentially it's just mocking exactly what they did in 1933.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
They took it all.
Yeah.
Okay, that's when they centralized all power in the mafia, too, when they created the Mafia Commission, by the way.
That's correct.
When Lucky Luciano became the head, and in the book, The Last Will and Testament of Lucky Luciano, he's a friend of John J. Raskob. He goes to Raskov's house. And out of Malta. Yeah. Okay, so anyway, how do you get out of this? This is what I did my course for it, and I'll just give it to you all. The papers, you need to take my course for that, but I'm going to give you the whole theory and how you do it.
Okay.
Number one, we understand Sir Henry Maine's work, Ancient Law. Sir Henry Maine was a Regis professor at Cambridge University, I believe, of the civil law. Remember, the civil law, the Roman civil law, the Jesuits love Roman civil law, because in the Roman civil law, the people are subjects, and everything they do is privilege. That's all regulated by the king. That's the continental law, the law of the continent. The common law recognizes certain God-given rights that cannot be infringed by the government or by the king. So the Jesuits hate the common law. Furthermore, if you're under the common law and a Roman Catholic is involved in an assassination of a president, when, as it was John Wilkes Booth and others, if he confesses that to the priest, like Frank Sturgis confessed to Terence Cardinal Cook in a 22-page confession of what happened in Dallas in 1963, and when he said in that 22-page confession that G. Gordon Liddy shot Officer Tippit, anything that's confessed to a priest in a confessional at the common law must be divested in court. And if you don't tell it, you're going to jail for contempt. at the civil law, at the common law, at the civil law, in equity, which, because equity is nothing more than civil law, you cannot be compelled to give that information. Isn't that cute? So it protects the Pope's international system of espionage through the confessional, because that's all it is. And you attach the power of the NSA to that, and they know everything. All right, so what they did was, when they did away with all that, with Sir Henry Maine, the first precept of Sir Henry Maine to do this is you have to establish a legal fiction. Well, they established the legal fiction, and that's when they created the birth certificate. When it was filed, the day it was filed, by operation of law, it became a unilateral contract under seal. I show this in my course. Once it became a unilateral contract under seal by operation of law, this is according to common law, the property registered became the property of the state. Because all state registered property is considered to be property of the state then. So you have this registration. But still American citizens, because this started in Pennsylvania in 1906, this filing of the birth certificate. But still people were considered private American citizens because they had not been seized yet until March 6, 1933. The first thing they got to do is you got to set up a legal presumption. A legal fiction, which gives rise to a presumption of law that you are a U.S. citizen until you rebut the presumption. Okay? Now, the next thing she said is after you have your legal fiction, you got to establish equity. Well, that's what they did after they handed down their Erie decision in the U.S. versus Carolyn Products case, which overruled Lochner versus New York, which established the wonderful Lochner era when American citizens were protected in their common law right to contract to labor. All right, so we're going to do away with Lochner. We're doing away with Swift versus Tyson with the two cases handed down on April 25th, 1938. Now we have courts sitting in equity on behalf of the conqueror. So what we now have is we have the complete and total power to legislate, and this is the final phase of Sir Henry Maine. Legal fiction, equity, legislation. And so that's why Congress is unlimited in its legislative powers over all U.S. citizens. So how do we do this? Number one, you have to separate yourself from this entity, this all-capital name entity, which, as you know, the all-capital name is the name of war. You're going to separate yourself from it, and you're going to revert back to being a private American citizen. And once you do this, I show in my course that the antecedent status is automatically restored once you file your unilateral contract under seal with a public state entity, and we do it in a court in Georgia. The next thing is, after you file this document, you're also going to rescind every signature you ever signed as surety for this artificial entity. Because now you have to prove you're not only not this entity, you're not surety for it, but you never signed for it as surety. And so that's the second document that's going to be, it's a rescission of signatures of suretyship. That will also be filed in the public record. Now, the third and fourth things you do, and there are 7 documents, but these 4 are most important, is that you common law lien, not use a UCC1, because they're making it impossible everywhere. I can't file one anywhere except the state of Kentucky now. So just forget them. They're ultimately going to do away with it in Kentucky. So just file a common law lien of the debtor with the language that you have on your UCC1. The debtor is a trust. The debtor is a transmitting utility. And and since all the property of the debtor has been liened, you have a beneficial interest in all the property of the debtor for your use, for your benefit as a private American citizen. All right, then once you do that, then you file your non-negotiable commercial security agreement spelling out how you're going to use this name for the benefit of the private citizen. And so therefore any income flowing to the artificial entity is going to pass through it being a transmitting utility to you, the private citizen, as property, not as income. Because a taxpayer is a taxpayer by status, not by what he does, but who he is. Since March 9th, 1933. Before 1933, it was by virtue of what you did that made you a taxpayer. Okay? So now that you got these documents on file, matter public record, now you have the ability to introduce into the record by way of affidavit your prima facie evidence that rebuts the presumption of the moving party that you are this all-capital letter entity. Now, as a private American citizen, if you're no longer a belligerent, if you're no longer a rebel to this looked upon by the de facto military government and such, what are you? Well, you're a friend. So you're introducing this affidavit for the record, amicus curiae, as a friend of the court. You're a friend. I don't have any beef with the judge. I got a beef with the moving party over here, and this is a case of mistaken identity, and I can prove it. I have one case in the state court here in Pennsylvania, in Bucks County, where I believe we have succeeded because the court has not answered this, and it's a $10,000 credit card case. All right. So when you have this prima facie evidence, you rebut the presumption of them claiming that you're a resident, a statutory resident. You're not. You're privately residing on the land of common law as a private American citizen. Use that on the local county boys when they send me a county tax return, and they don't send it to me anymore. So I don't receive any returns from any entity. Now, once you have this evidence, it's up to the moving party to prove that you are who they say you are. And in one of my pieces, one of the exhibits that I have that you will use in your affidavit of status, which the total amount of pages in this thing is 46 pages. What you'll do is you're going to bring the exhibit forth of a court proceeding that in 1994, federal judge in Los Angeles by the name of John Davis recognized the difference between the all uppercase name and the upper and lowercase name as put forward by this gentleman who was in court, Randy Lee, who was a part of the Jewel Society years ago. I don't know what happened to him. And the judge turns to the Jewish prosecutor of the Justice Department and says, "Well, Mr. Roth, what do you have to say about this case of mistaken identity?" And Mr. Roth says, "Well," he said, "apparently the defendant thinks that if his name's in not in all capital letters, that he's not subject to the code." Something like that. You know what the judge did? He didn't dismiss the case. He said, "Next case." Because he never had jurisdiction over the parties. And so if he didn't have jurisdiction over the parties, there was no case. And so if there's no case for the record that you can go check this out at. Because the way I have this is the transcript from the court reporter. There is no case that you can go check this out at.
Okay.
Because there was no case.
Okay, let me comment on that. Okay, I'm familiar with what you're saying. I've seen that in a lot of documents, that particular case. And are you saying that when you go in now, you're talking to people who got experience going into court? I got a lot of experience going into federal and state court. I'm not a novice at this by any means, and a lot of people who come on this show are not novices. And they go in, and I presented to a federal judge an affidavit stating that they surreptitiously amalgamated me to a corporate entity, and Inslee G's, this legal fiction entity, this all caps other name, that is a constructive trust in equity, because it's a constructive trust that they form,
correct,
which is a legal fiction entity, and they make you a trustee ex officio for that. And it is, you're right, it is, what I said is to pay the public debt. What they're doing is they're taking your private rights, bringing it over into the public to pay the public debt. Now, with that being said, a lot of people are going into court and have tried all types of techniques. They have tried to appoint the judge, the trustee of the trust. They have gone in and said, "I'm not that name." What I did is I read an affidavit into the record. I said, "I have an affidavit I want to make a part of the record." The strongest affidavit that I've ever seen work, that this is just me personally, is an affidavit that is a boilerplate document that is on the internet. It's called an affidavit of sovereignty. They've changed it to an affidavit of truth. But that affidavit, every time I've seen that put into court, it rebuts all the presumptions that constitute minimum contact would give impersonal jurisdiction to these courts over you. But I'm listening to your...
minimum context has nothing to do with it. Yeah, excuse me, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Pardon me. Minimum context has nothing to do with it. It has to do with your status. Status and process. That's all there is. And what you're doing is, in this instance, you're entering into the record as a friend of the court without making a pleading, without making an appearance, without making a motion. You're entering into the record for the purpose of the moving party to rebut it. Because you now have prima facie evidence. What you did is you don't have prima facie evidence. I have prima facie evidence. I got an affidavit. I got 7 exhibits here. I got a release that's filed in a public office. Now you have to rebut that release and show that I'm indeed a U.S. citizen, that I'm indeed in some sort of a contractual relationship with the state. You got to rebut that. They can't. If they can't rebut it, and the evidence before the judge is saying you can't rebut it, well then we don't have a case here. Because the judge is not your enemy, strictly speaking. We know practically he is, but strictly speaking, he's not. You are no longer an enemy and a belligerent. You're no longer a conquered entity and property of the federal government. You go back to the protection of being a private citizen of the United States. Your citizenship is protected by Section 1 of the 14th Amendment.
I like how you said that, but I did the same. I put back then I was able to file a UCC1, and I understand making evidence a part of the record where they would have to rebut. But I think on this show is what you're going to find is a lot of melanated individuals, blacks, run into problems in court because we're not even allowed to put our evidence on the record. These people got tricks. I've been there, okay? Let me tell you, they got tricks. They will lock you up in jail, tell your family that you've been going to court, never bring you in a courtroom. When they see that you're going to do something like this, you'll never even make it inside of a courtroom. You'll never even get to make a record, period, okay? So I have to bring in some sobriety to the conversation and some reality of those who may not have actually have the experience. Because the theory of this thing, while it is correct, and it's absolutely correct, everything you're saying I agree with, but in the application is where you're going to find a lot of the challenge because you're dealing with some individuals who are not particularly honorable. All that honorable. I will say that I don't think the judge is your enemy in a lot of cases, but I do think that they have a compelling state interest to keep people in slavery. Because when you go in,
they have a compelling interest for the benefit of the conqueror. That's why they're flying the conqueror's flag.
I agree. I agree with that. I agree with that 100%.
My point is theoretically, I believe this is the best way with regard to your evidence. Putting it in the court not as a motion, but it's simply for the record, and it's calling for the moving party to prove their case. I think this is but I understand the problem of the court. But remember, the judge is taking silent judicial notice of your status. And when they take that silent judicial notice, well, is he a U.S. citizen? Is he a resident? Has he rebutted anything about being a resident? Has he rebutted anything about being a U.S. citizen? Is he acting belligerently towards me? He's acting belligerent, why he must be a belligerent and a rebel living in occupied territory within this federal district. So I maintain that this is the proper way to go. At least you are no longer surety for a stranger. The Bible says in Proverbs 11:15, he that is surety for a stranger shall surely smart for it. We heard of this. Just destroy us. But he that hateth suretyship shall be safe. So we're no longer surety. There's no evidence that we're surety. There's no longer evidence that we're bonded as one entity with this artificial person. We no longer have this citizenship that was created by a birth certificate exactly as Roman Catholic citizenship is created by a baptismal certificate. They patterned it exactly as a Roman Catholic baptismal certificate.
You bring up some very interesting points, very good, but I'm sure it's going to be some couple of points, especially that Nation of Islam thing, you're going to inflame some people. But let's do this, because we only got an hour left, and I got a lot of people in the queue that want to ask you a question. Are you willing to take some phone calls now and face the public?
Sure. Sure.
Okay, good, because we got a lot of people that wanted to jump on this, got about an hour left. The phone lines are open. You can call in. The number is 424-222-5250. Once again, that's 424-222-5250. Let me go to the phone lines real quick. Let me jump over to area code 412. Last 4 digits, 1568. You're on High Frequency Radio. Did you have a question or comment for our guest? 412 area code 1568. Hit your mute button. Okay, let me go on to the next caller. 240-4502. You're on the air. Did you have a question or a comment for our guest? 240.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, you're on air.
Good afternoon. I have two questions. The first one, I want to know what Ron Brown knew or said or did to get himself killed.
I'm not sure exactly what it was, but of course he resisted Clinton, and so therefore when the plane went down, what was it, in Serbia, Kosovo, that area, they shot him in the head with a nice bullet, made sure he was dead.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. The second question, my daughter just had a baby about 12 days ago, and she didn't name the baby. When she left the hospital, she said they gave her a hard time before she left, and they sent her home with a paper for vital statistics, and she had to put her name on there and her birth date and the baby's father name and birth date. And the paper also read something on the back, and it said something, make sure you read the back before you sign the front. And it also said if you want to consult on get legal advice, you can do so or get a genetic test done. And I'm wondering now, what is the process that she should follow with the birth certificate issue?
Well, I personally believe, and this is what I've done for my youngest son, just get on the birth certificate. Because you see, there's going to be a presumption of law that you have one, because by virtue of your statutory residence. So just get it. Because you're going to need this entity to interface in commerce anyway. You cannot engage in commerce with your name. So just go ahead and get it. And then what you do is your daughter's going to file a release when she files her package for the baby. And now the baby is no longer the property of the state, and therefore no longer the property of the military, de facto military government. The baby's her property. Because you've proven that there's no state interest in the baby, because you filed a unilateral contract under seal undoing what the birth certificate did. That's what I've done.
So
the baby can go up.
Go ahead and get the birth certificate.
That's right.
And
because
if you don't, does it make a difference?
No, I remember. Pardon me. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Pardon me. I didn't mean to interrupt, ma'am. You said that.
Is it one that says live birth or something like that, and then is it another one that they give? Is it two different birth certificates that they issue you, or are you supposed to take the one that you sign right there, which is the original one? Will they let you have that or not?
Well, I take the one that you get a copy of what you sign, because they're going to send that application off to the state. The birth certificate that I use is the one that state says to you that it looks like a security. Okay. Got the pretty little things on all the borders of it, because it is a security. And just take that, and that's what you're going to use when you file your release. That's the evidence that you're in contract. Your release repudiates it. Doesn't do the way.
And so this release, is it a number on the release or something when she files it?
Oh, yeah. It's going to have a book and page number in a public office. It's in a court in Georgia. File all of our documents there and ask no questions. We don't have a problem with them at all, so I run it all through this court in Georgia. And so once you have that, you now have to pull the full faith and credit clauses, in the Constitution. Once a public document in Georgia can be brought anywhere in the country. So it's a done deal. And you've proven now that that baby is no longer in contract with the state. And by the way, this whole thing was planned by the Jesuits when their Roman Catholic Chief Justice Taney, in his Dred Scott decision, talked about American citizenship, and then he went on to say, if the states could reduce the American citizens to an inferior grade, that's his language. If you can reduce it to an inferior grade, none of these provisions of the Constitution as privileges and immunities, First Amendment, Second Amendment, would be considered part of his rights. So the states, by virtue, this is a huge Masonic conspiracy, but the states, by virtue of doing this, by filing the birth certificate, because it becomes a contract when it's filed, not before, By doing this, they reduce all of us to an inferior grade of citizenship. And so when you undo it with your release and rescission of signatures of suretyship, it's over. You revert back to the former status, ipso facto, being a private citizen of the United States, not a U.S. citizen, but a private citizen of the United States under Section 1 of the 14th Amendment, which is de jure citizenship.
Okay. And thank you so much for all your information. You are so well-rounded here. I know everybody is just in awe today, but I want to thank you and also Yusef.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening.
You're welcome, sister. You're welcome. Appreciate it. Thank you for the call. Real quick, let me California 626-0474. You're on High Frequency Radio. Did you have a question or comment for our guest?
How you doing?
All right, peace.
All right, glad I didn't have to hit my mute button. First, I want to thank the gentleman for being on, and Yusef, you're continuing your legacy of hard-hitting, informative guests. This is like off the chart. Really want to thank you, and thank you for taking my call.
It's a pleasure that you called.
Sir, your name again? I'm sorry, I was missing it.
Eric John Phelps.
Eric Johnson?
Eric John, Jon, Phelps.
Oh, okay. Eric John. I gather you're a Caucasian?
Yes, I am.
Okay. There's no inference or anything, but how can we as melanated people elevate our commercial status? Because it seems to be every time we try and put something together for our own self-determination, I'm speaking mostly economics. The host has had me on as a guest, and my topic was sustainable economic development. And how can we, as a people, I'll just keep it neutral here. What kind of status?
I understand.
What kind of status can we form legally that will free us from this chattel position, so that we can act as people, sovereign people, and practice commerce amongst the people of the world? Because right now, the way you make it sound, based on the comments that I heard, we're basically property of somebody. And how can we be sovereigns, being property of somebody? So
what you want to do is, excuse me.
Yes, sir.
What you want to do is, as I mentioned, you need to return to your private American citizenship status, which therefore you are entitled to a civilian due process of law. In theory, if they don't give you a civilian due process of law, if the opposing party cannot prove that you're a property or a belligerent or an enemy, United States citizen, then in theory there is no in personam jurisdiction of the court, because they use martial process to gain in personam jurisdiction, as you know. So therefore, when you become part of the sovereign people, again, you're not individually a sovereign. You become now one of the sovereign people, because the sovereign people created the Constitution. You now, because the citizenship was extended from whites to blacks and Asians and Hispanics, it was broadened and extended. You're now part of the sovereign people, and now you can use this entity to engage in commerce for your benefit. So what you're going to do is, when you open a bank account, because the banks only open bank accounts for all capital letter names. So you're going to use this entity to open your bank account, but after you're on the signature card, you're going to put a comma and put agent.
Right.
When you get your driver's license and you sign that with your signature, and I recommend just have a mark or something abbreviated like your signature, like the lawyers do. Put your signature on there. After that, agent. That's what I did here in Pennsylvania. Get your passport. Get the passport for the artificial person, that commercial artificial person there. You put your signature, sign it, agent. And I put private citizen on my passport. Agent, private citizen. So, and also send all the documents to the State Department requesting that they put that on file with my passport application. And I'm a private citizen. So when you issue me my dark blue passport, I'm not like all these other people. I'm not U.S. citizen. I'm a private citizen. And so I have the right to engage in commerce for my benefit using this entity. Now, here's where a problem comes along. The Congress has total power to regulate commerce.
Right.
And when you have all those white devils in the Senate, busy making sure that the black people cannot truly prosper and have real wealth. I'll give them all the Federal Reserve now if they want, but they can't prosper and have real wealth. What you need to do is start your movement, a benevolent movement, of exposing what I've said, that we've been reduced to property. We've been property of the federal government. We're property of the Pope's white power structure, and always predicate the term white power structure with the Pope. Once you say that, then you're going to say we want our own country because we're oppressed. And so what we want to say is we want to purchase the state of Georgia or the state of South Carolina, where over half of the population is black. We need to have our own nation. And rather than this government spending trillions of dollars to wage a crusade, why not just give us a hand and give us this property, and we'll make the change here so we can have our own nation. And that's the ultimate goal you want. You want, this is going to private American citizenship is the first step, but ultimately this is your goal. And you'll have white men like me.
But see, here's the thing now. Wasn't that what the Elijah Muhammad proposition, the same thing? He said, that was the fault, but that was his false policy. Elijah Muhammad speaks inflammatory words against white people. Right.
Call white people a bunch of white devils and all that. Say, and what does that do to white people? It makes you not want to listen. It makes you not in sympathy. But if you have respectable, decent black men saying, listen, we don't hate the white people, we just want to be separate from them because we have no future.
And with all due respect, when you look at what white people were doing at that time to black people, how are you going to get somebody to speak respectful? And they putting water hoses on your dogs. You just trying to go to school. People beating you, lynching you, cutting off your genitals, doing all these different things. These horrible atrocities.
They're horrible. But what you've got to say,
this is what this is in response to. Okay?
I agree. But what I'm saying is what you're saying is this is brought about by the Pope's white power structure in control of Southern Freemasonry down here, that you can't get a job as dog catcher unless you're connected. There's 500,000 Freemasons in the Southern Baptist Convention. So the Masonic papal connection always has to be brought out in any of your persecution, like it persecutes my white people, my white Protestant and Baptist people. I always bring out the white power structure that's controlled by the Pope, by Masonry. So that makes your argument moral. You've got the high ground now. You want to truly be a nationalist, have a country for your own people, for your ultimate benefit. And then you can engage in commerce and do whatever you want to do, because it's going to be hopefully a black Bible-based nation that has true liberty, because where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's liberty. And the Lord will bless your nation and enable you to engage in commerce and prosper. But He cannot bless any nation that's under the temporal power of the Pope.
Mr. John, I have another comment, question. Doesn't that make you a belligerent at that point, or a rebel?
No. What I am is, I'm privately a belligerent. Well, yeah. And I'm privately a rebel, but I'm not openly as a matter of status. As a matter of status, I can't be treated as a belligerent and a rebel because I'm not this living in a conquered territory. I'm a private American citizen. And so I have the protection of Section 1 of the Constitution. But privately, you know I'm a belligerent. You know I'm a rebel because I want my own nation. I want to separate. Now listen to this. Just yesterday I was watching a video on Google here, and the guy said that this government in Washington, and I call it, of course, the de facto military government, they have given China an interest in all the labor, land, and businesses of this country. How could they do that? March 9th, 1933. They took it all in, and they're communicating it all to China, so that China has an interest in all the people, all the land, and all the businesses here that will justify their invasion. When when blacks separate as a people in their own private nation, they are no longer to be a victim of this because they're not part of this empire. Same way with my white nation that I'm going to establish. We're no longer a victim of this. We're not these. Our property is ours now. We took a port. So I'm calling for Pennsylvania to secede, to declare its independence, and then I want just a little nation in Pennsylvania for us, because we don't want our land is ours. Our people they own themselves. They're part of the sovereign people that we create a new nation. It's got to be the ultimate end Meanwhile, in the law today, if you revert back to this private citizenship status, you are not a belligerent and a rebel. You're a friend of the court.
All right. My last question, and I'll get off. Thank you, Yusef, for accepting my call. What's your opinion of Minister Farrakhan and who controls him?
Minister Farrakhan is controlled by the Pope of Rome. He sends his lackey over there to the Pope of Rome periodically. Anybody that's involved with the Pope of Rome is serving the Pope of Rome, just like the head of the Ku Klux Klan. And that's why Malcolm X said, the Nation of Islam, the Ku Klux Klan had the same paymasters.
Okay, that does.
Now, I've heard that. That's not my first time hearing that, but that's inflammatory. I'm sure we're going to get some. We got Nation of Islam people listening to the call, so I'm sure they're going to be calling in. Okay. Okay. All right. Let me go to the next caller. I appreciate the caller. I got about 45 more minutes. A lot of people in queue with their hands up. I appreciate the call. Thank you, brother. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Appreciate it. Let me dip to Florida real quick. 813-3767. You're on High Frequency Radio. Do you have a question or comment for our guest? Hit your mute button. Now, can I hear you? 813, last four digits, 3767. Going once. Going twice. Okay, I'm going to go to Texas. Texas, 832-5863. You're on High Frequency Radio.
How y'all doing?
All right, great. You have a question or comment for our guest?
Yes, I wanted to see about if he could maybe tape his educational or his class and see if maybe we, for people who can't travel, because I'm tied up in a job, I wouldn't be able to travel through his
Sure.
Sure,
that's good.
But if
yes,
you,
what you want to do, my friend? Yeah, what you want to do is go to my website, 247worldradio.com.
Hold on. Let me get there
24/7 World Radio. That's 247worldradio.com.
Radio.com. Okay.
And once you get there, and you just go down, there's kind of a big black square that does all the broadcasting. Right underneath that, a little bit off to the right, you'll see a white square and it says listening options. Listening options. You click that, and then you'll go on down to the bottom of the page there on listening options, and you'll see to listen to past shows, click here. And then there's a place
okay,
just
I'm sorry.
I'll go back and
this says, oh no, this one says preaching the true gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ.
Yes.
Is that yours?
Right. That's mine.
Oh, okay.
Preaching the true gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ and exposing the power of the Jesuit order, yes.
Okay, all right, so I don't see the button.
Okay, if you go down, you'll see 4 buttons, 3 or 4 buttons, I believe that big dark square. See listening options?
I see a donate. It has Eric John Phelps, and then below it says donate.
Too far down. Are you on the regular page where you just go on to? Can you see the radio there? Radio broadcast?
Let me see. I see the 24/7 radio at the top, and then there's a smart mobile link.
Okay. It's right below the the square there where you have the radio.
Oh, let me do this. Can you give him your email address? And,
sure.
Yeah, just give your email address, and you can email Mr. Phelps, and I'm sure he can give you instructions on how you need to do what you need to do. Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, you can email me at Eric at 247worldradio.com. Eric at 247worldradio.com.
Okay. All right. Thank you. He got dropped off. Okay. Let me go to the next.
Okay. Well, let me tell him what he answers. When you go down, you click listening options. You go down and click here. Then you'll see up on the left EJP Hour 1, EJP Hour 2. So you click EJP Hour 1, you scroll all the way down, and then you'll see where I started titling my broadcast. And you have you'll see the American Citizenship course, and you're going to have like 14 of them. So you just listen to that,
Okay.
EJPR 1, then go EJPR 2, and you got another 14. So you got 28 hours to listen there for free.
Okay. Let me go to the next call. Let me go to Tennessee. Area code 615-0015. You're on High Frequency Radio. Did you have a question or comment for our guest?
Yes. Hello.
Hello. You're on the air.
First time, how about Eric. Hi. Damn it. Hold on. Hello. I have a question for Mr. Phelps. 2 questions, really. My first question is a gentleman here in Nashville, but I want to go private.
Okay, call, you're breaking up. You are breaking up. We cannot hear anything you're saying right now. You're breaking up real bad. You're breaking up real bad. Can't hear anything you're saying. You need to get somewhere stable.
Can you hear me?
Now you're breaking up.
Can you hear
Why
me?
don't you do the? Okay, I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, good. All right. First of all, thank you for taking me. I have 2 questions. My first question is, I'm looking to go private. A friend of mine here. I'm also holding public notary. Is it possible for me to be a private citizen and a public notary?
Okay, so you want to know how to become a private American citizen? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I'd like to become a private citizen, but I still would like to become a public notary for the state of Tennessee. Is that possible?
Okay, that's possible. That's possible because
good.
they're only going to give a notary to the all caps name.
Right.
So what you do, so whenever you take a privilege from the state, it doesn't mean you lose your private citizenship status. It just means you take a privilege with regard that entity that you are using for your benefit. You're not getting the privilege. The all caps name's getting the privilege. The entity that you're using for your benefit, you agree to be subject to the regulations regulating its use. So go ahead and get it, and then when you get the license for being a notary, just sign an agent. Put your signature in agent. Okay. Because you're not that enemy. You're not that entity. And that you do your driver's license, passport, voter registration card. That's not you. You're using that entity for your benefit, so you're just its agent.
What I always tell people in this show that it's public and private. Everything in the public is a corporate entity. It's a legal fiction, and it's utilized for commercial purposes. Everything in the public.
Yes. Right. Everything. Yep. So you're going to use the entity because you have to do something to make the money. You have to make a living. So you got to use this entity for your benefit, but you don't use that entity for your benefit until you get your papers filed. Otherwise, you're regarded as with one entity. You're regarding as one entity, this mutant, this artificial person wedded to this natural person. You're a mutant in the law, a hybrid in the law, and the judge is going to look at you or whatever. That's you until you get your papers filed.
Okay, cool. Good. And then my only other question is I also, when I was a minor, I had an annuity set up via the courts. If I go private, can I break myself out of that annuity and use it as I please for commerce?
I'm not exactly sure on that, but I would approach it with whatever you're signing. You're the agent for this entity. And remember, all the property of this entity that you've liened is your property. It's not the entity's property anymore. It's you have the beneficial interest in it, and so therefore it's for your use. And so you proceed down that road, and you should be able to use it for your benefit, and you will not be. There's no presumption that you're this entity in all caps anymore.
Right. All right, good. Well, thank you very much. I've appreciated listening, and I've definitely become a fan of your show, Mr. Yusef. I'm going to definitely listen from now on. This is very enlightening.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for calling. I'm going to move to the next call. We got a lot of people in queue, Mr. Phelps. A lot.
Okay, well, I got a lot of time. However long you want to go is all right with me.
And let me jump to 1111. I'm going to give this. I don't know who this person is. I got their number backed out. You're on High Frequency Radio. Did you have a question or comment for our guest?
Yes, Islam. Peace to the gods.
Peace.
Yeah, I was just listening. It sounds like when he said, using, I forgot the exact word he said, but basically bowing down to these ones again, like, submitting to them as like a house Negro would do. Yes, when we already went through all of that, when Elijah Muhammad was alive, the people already went through all of that. And just like Yusef said, I mean, these people were killing our people, basically sicking dogs on them, having them, ripping the genitals off of our mothers, the females, sicking dogs on them, putting water on them and all of that. Why am I going to put myself in a situation when the situation already exists and, bow down to them with we already been doing, we already came at them in a peaceful way. We always been peaceful to these so-called ones who are in power. We were never the aggressors, so we always been peaceful people, and I don't understand, to continue this when it hasn't got us. When you look at history, and history shows being peaceful to them never got us anywhere. Nowhere.
I guess
we going to the court and we beg for mercy.
Let him respond to that. That's a good question. Go ahead, Mr. Phelps. Go ahead and respond.
Yeah, I guess I don't understand why you say I want you to bow down to these people, which, of course, is the Pope's white power structure. Where did I ever say to bow down to them?
Well, not specifically bow down, but it's in a manner of to me, it sounds like, you have the field Negro and the house Negro, and the house Negro is the one that's like, yes, sir, master, your house burned down, he going to say, our house burned. If the master's sick, he's going to say, we sick. It's two different people you're talking about. You want to, it sounds like, again, like you said, for us to, we're coming at them in an angry way.
No, I was talking that when you revert back to the former status that you had at your birth, you are no longer, can be legally considered to be an enemy and a belligerent of the de facto military government established on March 1933. Are you privately belligerent? Well, of course, just like me. Mm-hmm. And that's why I want another country, because I can't live under this government anymore. They're driving us white people to desperation. They're taking our money. And all people, but both blacks and whites, all people, they're driving us to desperation, and that's what they want, because they have to have a justification to implement their martial law. And I want to avoid this. So I'm not going to get an audience. I'm not going to get people to listen to me if I call all black people a bunch of black devils, just like Louis Farrakhan does. Mm-hmm. You with me? Can't do it. The Bible tells me in 1 Peter 2:17 to honor all men, and that's what I do. And so in an attempt to honor all men, what's the best for all men? What's the best for all men is best for me too, because the principles are the same. Racial separation, which the Nation of Islam advocates.
I'm going to tell you how I see it. I'm going to tell you how I see it, and this is what I've been trying to convey to the Moorish community, is that the commerce and the nationalization don't really have anything to do with each other. It's like it's a commercial world, and we want to nationalize so we can do our own commerce. But right now, we have to, in order to exist in their world, we got to be able to make a distinction in our mind exactly what constitutes nationalization and what constitutes commerce. They are only concerned with commerce, all right? And as you said, these courts are set up for the benefit of the creditors, who is an unnamed entity. They don't name this particular entity. But that's how I see it. I see it as that, hey, this is a commercial world. This is about business. They are conducting business. And I think that we can peacefully counteract what they're doing. But first of all, the things that I propose is we stop buying their goods and services and start creating our own goods and services. I think that would be the number one thing to do. But that's how I look at it as. I look at it as, look, you know, we saying that, on one minute, well, you bow down to the white man, all this type of stuff, but then you run out and go buy his products. You run out and go buy his
we're at commercial warfare. We are at commercial warfare, and again, the way they keep power is keeping, because the driving force of their commercial, you know, how the finances, all of these slaves. That's the driving force. Right. They got to keep the slaves.
That's right. And so we white folk, just like black folk, are equal slaves. We're equal in our slave communism to these international bankers who are Knights of Malta serving the Pope. So I advocate that you do exactly what I want to do. Let's benefit from commerce. Let's acquire some money. And then when we acquire some money, let's do our best to have our own nation, because we can't live under this empire anymore. And then we can have our own nation. But it's something in steps. And so that's why I need some white millionaires to help me, and that's why you need some black millionaires to help you.
But again, why do we even have to get in the premise of saying white or black? I mean, if we're together in this, we call it what it is. You can get all the listeners.
We're together in this in our resistance to this papal white power structure, but the end result is that we separate unto our own peoples by race, language, and culture, which is the biblical solution. Forced race mixing ultimately leads to race war.
Uh-huh.
Okay? So we don't want that. We want to have our own nation. So we
I thought that's what you were for. I think, isn't that what the Nation of Islam and everybody is about? I don't see him saying anything bad. I've always been like this. When I look at white people who have businesses and they hire only white people, I don't get mad at white people, because white people are doing what white people are supposed to do. They're taking care of their own first. I think black people are the only people who have problems with these things, is because they don't have a proper concept in their mind of taking care of their own first. So they scream, oh, you're racist and everything like this. But it's like, no, you have the illness because you don't understand how to take care of your own first. So there's an old video on the internet of Muhammad Ali. He's over in England, and he's having a discussion, and they saying, well, we're all brothers in this. He said, look, before we can become brothers with the world community, we got to learn how to become brothers with ourselves first. We don't have that.
And isn't that with Moses? I mean, when they ran out of Egypt and ran away from the Pharaoh, let me take my people, let my people go. We don't want to mix with you. I mean, that's my. Of course. I mean, that's Bible.
Of course. That's Bible. That's right. I believe in racial separation for the Hebrew Jewish Israelites, just like I believe in racial separation for any other people, because we don't want to race mix, because when we were one race before the Great Flood, we all united against God. The biblical thing remains our race.
Yeah, I mean, so that we're just speaking Bible, lingual.
Well, what I'm saying,
and how is that Go ahead.
But what I'm saying here is, if you have a leader, right, like Louis Farrakhan, who is the lackey, and I'm going to inflame somebody here, but who's the lackey for the Archbishop of Chicago, Francis Cardinal George, that demon-possessed sinner, and he being subject to that demon-possessed Pope of Rome, how can you have a leader that you know is going to be truly loyal to his own people if he's bowing down to the Pope? It can't happen. And that's why I think that's one of the reasons why Khalid Muhammad was killed, because he denounced the Pope of Rome.
Oh yeah, that's my brother, Khalid Muhammad. That was the true
but you see,
warrior, right?
He denounced the Pope of Rome, unlike Farrakhan, who sends up an ambassador to the Pope.
And I'm trying to get on the show right now. One of the very, very close individuals who was very, very close to Khalid Muhammad, he's agreed to come on the show. So he's going to be scheduled on the show in the very near future. I'm sure he's going to have some good information to tell about that. But let me interject here. I got to take another call, though. I got to take another call.
Okay, wait. Before you go.
We're limited on time, okay? Go ahead.
Okay. All right. This is about the UCC. You said now they're not accepting the UCC. It's so hard, but, I mean, nobody can do a UCC now? This is for either one of you guys.
No, I'm not saying, I don't, in some spots it's hard, not every spot. In some spots it may be, like in Georgia, you may have difficult filing, they call them straw man filings in Cobb County, but you may be able to go over to DeKalb County and file one. That has been my experience. It just depends. In some states you file UCCs at the Secretary of State, and in some states you file on the county level at the courthouses. So it depends, it depends. And then you have regional UCC offices. So you may not be able to, and then some people have success just filing them online. We've had trouble filing them in Texas. I went up to the Secretary of State in Texas, and they would not let us file them. They would not let us file.
I did mine in California. I thought you were talking about nowadays it's just so hard that it's almost impossible. I'm in California, so mine's done through, in California. But I wanted to do one for my son,
Yes, it's in some areas. It's not, but it is progressively getting harder. They are passing because what it is they're saying that you're a tax protester, that you're trying to circumvent paying taxes, and which it's really not. See, I don't like calling it a secure party creditor process. I like calling it private banking, because what you're doing is that you are the one that creates commerce by your signature. And and as a private individual, you're the creditor on the private side, you're a debtor on the public side. So it's like, really, when you read your security agreement and all this, which people don't read it, the boilerplated ones that are out there, because the people who really originated this didn't know what they were doing. It's saying that you do agree to discharge all public charges that your straw man will incur. You're not there to challenge these people or anything like that. So really, in essence, what they're saying is wrong, because a lot of people who file their paperwork, they are saying a lot of people are ignorant. They are tax protesters. And they don't understand that, you come completely out of this system, you got to give up everything, including these Federal Reserve notes, everything they're doing if you want to have your own thing. But then there's a thing where if you're going to be a nationalized society, you have to have your own money, you need to have your own land, and you need to have your own military force that's going to protect all of that. And that's my position on it. And if you don't have those things in place and everything, you're dreaming. Okay, so our next step is to find out how we going to survive within this system. It's not that I'm a proponent of the system or anything like that, but I'm a realist. Our people out here, they're going to work every day. You're not going to get these people to pick up guns and starting a revolution or anything. They go to work, get on the highway every day and go to work, back and forth, waiting on a check. And now you sit here and tell them we need to revolt? Are you serious? And then you're going up against the people every day. They train to kill people every day. This is what they do. This is what they do every day.
That's right.
It's trained to kill and destroy. Who's waiting for you to jump up and say, hey, yeah, we need to take this. And you ain't taking nothing because you're not ready for it. You're not ready for it, okay? These people go all over the world taking everything, killing, leaving chaos and destruction in their wake. Let's be realistic.
The Pope's military. It's the Pope's American military. That's right.
Thank you, Yusef, and thank you to the guests. Guests, please don't hold back. We're all grown folks on here, and we can take it if it even comes across the wrong way. We can, read through the lines and see the message in it. So, yeah, go ahead and let it out. Don't hold nothing back.
I've tried to do that. I've tried to do it. I haven't withheld anything, so I'm doing my best.
We good people. We understand.
He's dropping it. Y'all check out some of his YouTube videos on YouTube. That's what I saw. I said, oh, yeah, he's going to be good. I was listening to some broadcasts on. He was going off. He's going in. And I like that. We need to have something like this because he's very, very, I like his honesty. I like his, and hopefully, and I knew it wouldn't come across as offensive. I say he's not offensive with it. He's just telling the truth. He say, look, this is what it is, And, of course, everybody knows he has some biblical principles that he abides by, but that's his choice, okay? I'm not here to challenge anybody's religious beliefs or anything like that. But, he's a morally upright man, and he's doing what he thinks is right. And I think he has a lot of merit to what he's saying, Obviously, he's done a tremendous amount of research, obviously. All right, so that's what I'm bringing to the forum. His research, his knowledge, and everything, and let people see that for themselves. And then, hey, we can engage in that. But let me go to the next caller real quick. We're short on time. A lot of people got their hands up. You are pissing some people off in the chat room. A lot of people throwing things out. Hopefully they're going on the line. Let me go to the next caller. Okay, thank you, caller, for calling in.
Oh, peace.
All right, peace, brother, peace. Let me go to Louisiana real quick. 502 area code 2871. You're on High Frequency Radio. do you have a question or comment for our guest? 502 area code, hit your mute button. Your phone is muted. 502-2871, Louisiana.
Are you sure this is am I coming on?
Yeah, you're on now, sir. I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm in Kentucky, not Louisiana. That's why I wasn't answering.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sure where you're in Louisiana.
I apologize. It is Kentucky. I'm looking at my area code list. I apologize. Okay. Go ahead. Yeah,
okay.
Go ahead.
Hey, Brother Eric, this is Drake Shelton, your friend from Kentucky. How you doing? I had a question for you, something that you said earlier around the 49-minute mark. You said something about Jim Crow had something to do with some Southern Freemasons. I wanted to see if you could throw some names at me on that, because in my study of Plessy versus Ferguson and Jim Crow was passed by Yankee legislators, and it was the only Supreme Court justice that voted against it was a Southerner named Mr. Harlan, and just confused by what you said at that point.
Okay, well, I maintain Plessy versus Ferguson was again put upon us by the Jesuits in control of the court to foment hatred between the whites and the blacks, but the ones who enforced that, the ones who enforced these things and statutes that would ultimately arise out of Plessy versus Ferguson were Southern Freemasons. Yep.
I could believe that.
Well,
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's just the way it sounded like you said that it was passed by Southern Freemasons, and it for sure it was passed by they were all Yankees, and the only one that voted against. Yeah, go ahead.
The Yankees in the North most assuredly passed it, but they're enforcers. So I correct myself about that. The enforcers were the Southern Freemasons.
Yeah. Okay.
The white.
Yeah. All right. I just there's been a number of comments made on the show today, and as a Southerner, as a member of the Sons of Confederate Veterans, as a man who was born and raised in Mississippi, I think I can bring a little perspective to a number of frustrations that I've heard a number of commenters use against white people and the perpetration of violence against.
Well, Drake, that might be a time where you can get with Yusef and have your broadcast with him, because that might be very good. Yusef might want to have you, and I think it might happen. But
all right.
You just have to reserve a question or a comment.
I just wanted to make a couple comments. Number one, in the South, we didn't send slave vessels to Africa, and we did. And my fathers in Virginia did everything that we could to stop the slave trade coming to our shores, and it was shoved down our throat by King George, and Thomas Jefferson catalogs it in our original Constitution of Virginia, stating that we tried to stop this damn African slave trade, but he shoved it down our throat. And to start a race war. King George wanted to start racial agitation here, to do here in the South exactly what the Jesuits did in Haiti, in the Dominican Republic area. Yeah.
Napoleon.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just as a perspective, I'm not justifying any act of violence that anybody did in the South whatsoever. However, as a matter of perspective, you got to understand from the Southern perspective. If you read books like Walter Sisko's War Crimes Against Southern Civilians and Prescott Webb's Divided We Stand, they document in detail that after the Civil War, the war crimes against the Southern civilian people, just a rape, pillage, and murder of the Yankee Army against our people down here, and then how the Yankees, through pensions, through patent laws, redistributed our wealth up into the North to completely impoverish us down here. You got to understand, I'm not saying it was the correct view, but from a common Southern white man in the South, he sees the black man as a man who the federal government is his thug and his bodyguard. He may not see the black man. He doesn't see the black man in himself. He sees the black man coming with this thug called the federal government.
Well, let me tell you,
completely destroy us.
Let me tell you how black people see the federal government. What black people see the federal government, when we look in all 50 states, what we see is that 70% of the blacks are incarcerated in all 50. Even if we make up 15% of the population, like up in Montana or someplace like this, the predominant population of the people who are in prison are black people. Our neighborhoods, by this government that you're saying is sitting up protecting us and everything, flooded our neighborhoods with drugs. This same government is passing draconian laws, destroying our families, sending our people to jail for life sentences over some bullshit. All right, that's how we see the federal government. So I don't know what you're talking about, but we don't look at them as our motherfucking friend. Okay, we looking at this. We trying to get out of this shit. They're oppressing us every fucking day. So I don't know where the fuck y'all are getting this ideology from, but it damn sure ain't coming from us. All right, I don't know what you're talking about. Where y'all getting that from?
Okay, fine. Read the books by Walter Sisko, War Crimes Against Southern Civilians. Read Dr. Prescott Webb's book, Divided We Stand. They document in detail how the federal government has completely annihilated who we are as a people, completely taken our wealth from us. And I'm not saying that the federal government's your buddy. I'm just saying that from a Southern perspective, that's what it looks like.
How
from
can
a
it look
white
like
man's
that, man? Let's go to a prison. What the federal government is doing is they have created a judicial system that's nothing but a front for a new slavery. Slavery was not abolished. You read the 13th Amendment, it was transported to the prison system, and that is exactly where they sending our ass. Straight to prison to be slaves. Now, how is that protecting us? How is that protecting us?
Well, I'll add something here. Remember, the 13th Amendment forbids involuntary servitude. So they just made it a voluntary servitude by way of the birth
unless you are convicted of a crime. It also says unless you're convicted of a crime. And what they have done is they made any and everything a crime. Drugs is a victimless crime. It is correct. You can look up any. It's not even a victim, and they're taking people, they're locking them up, and they're destroying our families. 70% of our households are headed by single-family mothers. How the hell is the federal government our friend? Man, you must know what people doing.
I never said the federal government was your friend.
Mm-hmm. I mean, but you're saying it's looking like this to your people. I'm like, your people must be watching Fox News. That's what y'all must be looking at.
I could go through a rap list of what the federal government has done for us. Number one, as Eric has proven very clearly, it completely destroyed the form of government that our fathers fought and bled for in the Revolutionary War. Completely destroyed our religion. You talk to a liberal professor at the headquarters of liberal religions right here in my city of Louisville, Kentucky. The number one reason why the Bible is an errant document is slavery. That's the number one thing that comes out of their mouth. The number one thing that comes out of their mouth. Our religion has been completely annihilated. Who we are as a people, our wealth, everything our fathers worked for has been annihilated, and it's been done from a common man perspective for the benefit of the black man.
Man, I don't agree with that. It has not been done for no benefit. How are we benefiting?
I'm not saying you did, dude. I'm not saying you did. I'm saying that's what it looks like.
That's what it looks like. If we're not benefiting, wait, let me ask you a question. If we're not benefiting, then how can it look like it was done for our benefit? It's not.
I just explained it to you, dude. I just gave you a rap list of it.
And then you talking about what y'all built. What got built in this country was on our backs. We built this country. You didn't build a goddamn thing.
First of all, sir, it was my fifth great-grandfather, Roderick Shelton, fought for George Washington in the Revolutionary War. It was white blood that was shed to give us freedom from the British Empire, sir. And I have advocated on my website and on other websites. I completely understand. Your ancestors were integral in the building of this country, and that's why I believe your people should be given a huge portion of land here for your people to live and to live in peace.
That's right. And you see, this is how we can unite with a common purpose. We white men who've been victimized by this Yankee federal government, this military government imposed by the Jesuits through FDR, we need to unite with other black men who want to have their own country and separate from this de facto military government so we can work together to that end with the understanding that we're going to have our own separate nations.
That's right.
Agree?
Okay. All right. I'm sorry for getting inflamed. No, I hope, caller, you didn't take no offense what I was saying. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. But
I like that because it means you're listening to what I'm saying.
Yes, I am. I am listening very closely to what you're saying. I'm glad you're calling in because I want to get this type of participation from our white listening audience, because I know I got a lot of white people listening to my show, and I want you to call in and give your views on things. I don't want this to be polarized as, oh, that's a black radio station. No. I want it to be both views, because in the business that I'm engaged in, I have white clients and black clients, and what has always struck me as very curious is I have like whites, Latinos, everybody's having problems. But then we'll come in and say, well, they're oppressing us, and then I'm saying, well, I can't really agree with that, because the Most High has shown me that everybody's getting oppressed. That my white friends, they catching just as much hell as black people, and it doesn't matter how much money they got. Doesn't matter how much money they got.
Show me some Catholics being oppressed. I don't see the Catholics being oppressed much at all here. I see them being completely franchised. You look at the high-level positions in government. You look at the Supreme Court. My government here in Kentucky is completely dominated by Roman Catholics.
Yep. And see, in my country, there aren't going to be any Roman Catholics. They're not allowed.
Hell yeah.
Because they have allegiance to a foreign monarch, and that's the overthrow of nationalism.
They can take their ass back to Europe.
All right. Hey, look, we got about 10 minutes. It's a whole bunch of people. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go over y'all. I'm gonna extend the call 1 hour. I'm gonna try to grab as many of these calls as I can. I see we have a lot of people want to participate. Caller Kentucky, I want to thank you for calling in. I appreciate your comments. Okay.
All right. Bye. All right. Bye.
I appreciate it. Let me go back to the phone lines real quick. Area code 302-7775. Let me. 302-7775.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You're on the air. You're on the air.
Peace, and assalamu alaikum to everybody, those who are listening. And I've been listening in to the conversation from the beginning. My question is, I guess we're going to have to wait until brother come on to clarify some things that were said about the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Now, regarding your host and speaker, with quite some information. I'm not calling into battle. My name is Lorraine Muhammad. I've been a listener. Brother Savage L introduced me to the high frequency, and I really respect. And I'm not here to argue or anything, but I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page when Ali Muhammad comes on regarding the Pope. And let us give out some information that is positive. I love the high frequency, but when one could come on, and I'm not battling. I'm not calling in the battle.
Mm-hmm.
Because the information I've gotten as far as my nationality and all the information, and yourself, Yusef Ali, I salute all of y'all. Yusef L, I salute all of y'all. But when it comes to talking about our leaders and what our leaders are doing, and I think even before that, we had some differences regarding what's going on in our community. So let us be positive when we come on these airwaves. We don't want to show no dissatisfaction on what Farrakhan or what whoever you guys say. The name is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And we need to stop that, because if we can't unify ourselves on whatever someone is doing, people are doing phenomenal jobs. We're all in this struggle together. When we start separating, then there's a problem. So I want to know, what is the problem?
Let me say this first, and I appreciate your comments, sister.
I'm not on here.
I know, I understand. I
love you. You know I love you. I'm just I love you.
I love you too.
You know I love you.
Now let me just say something. This is a talk show. And sometimes I'm going to have guests on who may be controversial. I told y'all at the beginning that this is a controversial guest.
Okay.
I already knew his position on Farrakhan. Now here's the thing that I'm going to say. Either something is true or it's not true. Okay? I don't know. I have a lot of respect for the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. A lot of things that he's saying is a surprise to me. And I do invite intelligence research responses from the Nation of Islam. You know, it's like, hey, I ain't never heard that before. Even though I did see Honorable Louis Farrakhan did apologize to Betty Shabazz for the death of Malcolm X. There's a video on YouTube with that. Now, this is Farrakhan himself doing this, okay? I posted the link for that in the chat room. Okay, I posted the link for that myself on the chat room. So there has been some discussion about that. As far as the Nation of Islam being started by the Vatican, I've never heard that before. However, I do invite the nation, and I will give the Nation of Islam a platform. You know what I'm saying? I'm that type of person. The Nation of Islam will come on the radio and say, I give them 4 hours to show how all what he said was a lie. If that's what they want to do, you know what I'm saying? That's the type of person I am. So I'm neutral. I'm not here to say, hey, well, he's having it right. I'm not. This gentleman is a controversial author. He has written a book called Vatican Assassins. He has done an extensive amount of research that is undeniable, and it's up to the listening audience to do their own research and see if they're going to find out if he can lend any credence to what he's saying on this show. This is a talk show. Okay, there's no difference if he came on Oprah Winfrey show and said, you know, and made all these statements and inflamed some people. You know what I'm saying? So I just want to get that out there, okay, sister? And I want the Nation of Islam to know that no, I'm not against the Nation of Islam. This wasn't some attack on the Nation of Islam or anything like this. This gentleman has a wide variety of information. Right. And I know what you're saying. You feel like he's attacking your leader, and I can understand that. You know, he's
I'm not saying it's not your leader. I'm not saying the leader because I'm not led by anyone but the Almighty God, Allah. But I wanted them to give respect to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, regardless of what situation or whatever he is or whatever he's saying. But we got to be mindful. But I respect that, but we got to be mindful of what we say. If it's not actual facts, because you got those who are listening that maybe might not do research. And we need every hands-on to anything that's positive, whether it's coming through a Caucasian that's on your radio show or anyone else. But we need some positive. We got enough negativity against us already. So we don't need anybody else to come in with another point of a negativity. We're going into a new year. Let's go on with love and positive. You know, keep the negative to yourself. Let us all be mindful that we are melon people and we want to be loved. We want to be warm. We want to give love back out to the universe. Negativity can stay out the door. Right. Hey, I don't mean to cut you off, but don't associate us with that type of behavior to the world because that's not what's going on, beloved. You know that.
I understand where you're coming from.
You know that.
I understand where you're coming from.
Because I got so many people already listening in Delaware who know me. I've been doing a phenomenal job. I don't want them to start coming back and, man, I ain't listening to that guy because you know what? You're going to get people that's going to just turn off. But you got so much information. Be mindful that you are helping and wake. You woke me up. So I'm just saying, be mindful.
But you cannot. I understand. But what has he said? What is the only thing it seems like in all that he said today that you feel like is garbage is that he said something arbitrary about the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, based off of research that he has conducted. All right, he said he based off some research and he has found that the Nation of Islam was started by the Jesuit priesthood. I don't know anything. However, this is wait a minute. Hold on.
I would add this. I have a picture of Warren, Wallace Muhammad, there with the Pope in Rome, John Paul II. What's he doing there?
Hey, David, are you Caucasian? Excuse me. Are you a Caucasian man? Okay, you're a Caucasian man, and I'm not trying to overspeak you. But before you start saying that you got pictures or whatever, anything you can, say, I'm not going to disrespect you. I'm going to let you go ahead and say what you need to say because I'm intelligent enough to listen. So you said you have a picture. Go ahead. I'm listening.
My point is that anybody that goes to see the Pope of Rome, like the white man Billy Graham, is busy serving the Vatican. And how can you have a leader that wants to lead you to any kind of freedom who's going to be busy subordinating himself to the Pope by kissing his ring when you go see him?
Now, I have to agree with the sister on one point. Now, that is inflammatory because what proof do you have that the Honorable Louis Farrakhan is doing it other than a picture or something like that? I mean, that's presumptive. That would be hearsay in the court of law. You wouldn't have any factual evidence to substantiate what that statement you just said.
Yeah, well, I have circumstantial evidence. When is Louis Farrakhan said the
then
Pope
you have
of
to
Rome,
say that. Then you have to say that. You cannot indict that man and say that he's kissing, because Louis Farrakhan, I will say this, Louis Farrakhan was one of the people that I started listening to early on as a youth. And he said some things that I just couldn't believe that that anybody would think that he would, be with the truth and the spirit of how the man comes across. We as the people, we can feel what the man is saying. Now, I'm going to allow you to present this evidence of what you're saying, but it's circumstantial, and I do have to agree with the sister. If you don't have any facts to support that, then what you're doing is you're kind of defaming the man without cause.
No,
fairness,
because in the final analysis, he does not want a black nation in North America. Because if he was serious about it, let me finish. If he was serious about it, he would be given the same treatment that Malcolm X was given. Because the Jesuits have stopped all Back to Africa movement, and they've stopped all true nationalistic movement among black leaders. Show me one that really wants it, other than Khalid Mohammed, before which he denounced the Pope, and he appeared to be truly a nationalist black leader, and he was suddenly killed. I say he was killed.
Yeah, I'm going to have some of Khalid Muhammad's people on, too, very soon, in the next couple of days.
Hey, let me jump in real quick. Number one, you got 35 seconds to call in, 424-222.
And thank you for taking over. And thank you for taking over the host line for me, man. I appreciate that.
Excellent show. The other thing I'd like to jump in is I think that the picture with the Pope raises questions, because what he's telling you is that in order for you to have a picture with the Pope, you've kissed the ring. This is the reality of the engagement. Now, it's possible that he encountered him and didn't kiss the ring, but the protocol is that you kissed the ring. So the suspicion is, I think, in my mind, is stronger than just a suspicion, because the protocol is being received by the Pope.
Right. And that's why.
Ring.
That's why Barry Davis Obama. That's why Barry Davis Obama is nothing more than the stepping fetcher for the Pope of Rome, as he's told what to do by that Roman Catholic Joe Biden, who has 2 honorary degrees from Jesuit universities, one St. Joseph's in Philadelphia and the other University of Scranton.
That's true. Yep. That's very true. But
this is a powerful show, because you're absolutely right that there needs to be a competent understanding that the subject matter and issues of concern are relevant to all parties, no matter how far on the spectrum they may be from each other. What the young man that talked about what the government did to his people, all the government did was have him join our people.
That's right, because we have a mutual enemy and a mutual enemy.
The Southern European was have him join our people in the subjugation.
And I got some people from the Nation of Islam online. Let me bring a sister in. I'm gonna leave your and I understand where the sister's coming from. Let me bring in another person real quick from the Nation. 678-3490. You're on High Frequency Radio. Do you have a question or comment for our guest?
I have a comment and I have a question. First of all, I was born into the Nation of Islam, and I didn't take any offense to his comments regarding the possibility that Louis Farrakhan or any representative of the Nation of Islam may have had interaction with the Pope. In my opinion, I agree with Mr. Savage. You know the terms of engagement before you go. So if any member, any leadership from the nation has an engagement with the Pope, they understand the terms of that. They won't be the exception that won't have to do it just because they're a Nation of Islam leader. So, as you stated, Yusef, you have to be open-minded to these opinions and either prove or disprove them. I didn't take offense to any of it, and personally, after the death of Elijah Muhammad, the nation split, That's not a negative thing. It's not negative to make a statement of fact about the Nation of Islam. It's good. You had those that decided to go with Warith Muhammad and those that went with Louis Farrakhan. I haven't seen where there has been a mass benefit for any members of the Nation of Islam outside of the hierarchy. Any real social benefit. Now, when Elijah Muhammad was alive, we had your supermarket. We provided our own food. We provided, services that we could patronize one another. But since that death, I cannot see, like John said, where there has been a true movement to create a separate or a nationalistic community for African Americans. I don't see where that's taking place. And I'm not trying to, I'm not bashing the sister that came on at all, but I think that she needs to be a little more open-minded. If someone is speaking something that may be a matter of fact, that's not negative. You can't say that that's a negative view to take, because even within the Nation of Islam, it's not a united front.
When I brought Mr. Phelps on, I wanted people to take everything. And this is what we have to do as a people. We have to start taking a purely scholastic stance on everything that is introduced with us without becoming emotional about it. It's like, okay, you just made a statement. All right, let me check your statement. This is debate. Okay, you just made this statement. Let me show you how what you just said is incorrect. Like I said, he has some views about the 14th Amendment. I don't particularly agree with everything that he said about the 14th Amendment. However, he was able to introduce some facts that I'm not privy to, that I'm going to have to go after the show and I'm going to have to investigate for myself. So these are things that we need to take into consideration as well. Okay, we got some more calls.
Wait, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, my question is, with a lot of I've come across in my study and my research so many different, remedies for our slave status here. And to the gentleman that said the federal government, he sees us as, an extension of the federal government's oppression of white America. I can pull up and give you hundreds of counts of where we don't see them as a partner and they definitely don't view us as one. And I wanted to ask, is there a true solution in dealing with the federal government for anyone when you are dealing with criminal cases with the federal government or mortgage cases with the federal government? Is there any true way to take yourself out of their jurisdiction? Because I just haven't seen one.
Is that for me or?
Yes, it's for you.
Okay. There's a gentleman that will be in my class January 17th and 18th. He's a black gentleman, very erudite. He's in his late 50s.
Mm-hmm.
He wins every mortgage case. He wins every credit card case. He wins every student loan case. And he's also gotten people out of prison after sentencing. He has a tremendous amount of knowledge. He's going to be there. So there is a way to address this. He says it's all commerce, which is correct, of course. But he has ways in which he does these things that he will not teach anybody, because if he teaches you, they're going to kill him.
Right.
So there are ways to deal with it, and you have to engage in contract with him before he ever talks to you. So I would recommend this gentleman, and that you want to talk with him. And the other thing is, again, the theory that I've set forth here, when you return to being a private American citizen under Section 1 of the 14th Amendment, that legally the de facto emergency war powers courts sitting in equity for the benefit of the conqueror cannot give you a martial process because you're not a belligerent or a rebel living in an occupied territory. And so therefore, if they can't give you the process, in personam jurisdiction cannot be conferred. That's what I say.
Okay, do you have the information? What did you say the gentleman's name was?
Why don't you call me, dear?
Okay, what's the number?
610 589. 610-589-5300.
Okay. I sure will. Thank you. That's it, Yusef.
All right, excuse me, host, guest, could you repeat that number one more time for me, please?
Okay, my phone number is 610-589-5300.
589.
Yes.
All right. And your name, sir? I'm sorry, I came in late.
I say Eric, E-R-I-C, John, J-O-N, Phelps, P-H-E-L-P-S.
Thank you very much, sir. I look forward to speaking with you soon.
You're welcome.
Miss Abigail.
All right. What's this?
Yusef, not my name on call. I'm getting in trouble for that. Yusef, you still there? Or you want me to keep going?
Yeah, I'm still here. Okay, I'm still here. Okay, I'm gonna let you. We're gonna be ending the show.
Yeah, somebody's trying to call me now. So if you just wait until the show's over, I'd appreciate it.
All right, and my sister in Delaware, you still there?
Yes.
Okay, I know you're still on the line and everything. I had your line open.
I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I am. I'm going to give you one last time to do a comment. You had something else you wanted to add on, because I moved to the next call.
I just want to say thank everyone. Everybody have their opinion. We have an open mind. I love the show. So keep up the good work and let us do our studies in righteousness. And let's be positive. And I really enjoy the show. And it's just giving me something to go ahead and study even more. So I want to thank everyone.
Thank you, sister.
Well,
thank you. I appreciate you calling in. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, let me move to the next. Okay, let me move to the next call. And, Paul, you may have to close the show out because I may have run into some technical difficulties before the end of the show. But let me jump up to New Jersey real quick, 908-1375. You're on High Frequency Radio. Did you have a question or comment for our guest? Hello? New Jersey, 908. You're on the air.
Can you hear me?
You're on the air.
Yes. My question for the guest is how does one go about that process if you say like from the Caribbean or from one of those other islands in regards to removing yourself from being a citizen of the United States?
Yeah. Are you a citizen now?
Yes, currently.
Naturalized? Okay, there's a way to do it. It has to include your birth certificate from Jamaica or wherever you might be from. But you use that because that's a commercial document, and you attach that to the document that I show you the file. And I did a guy from Romania a couple months ago. He was naturalized.
Okay. Okay, great.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Are you there?
Yes, hello? Can you hear me?
Hello?
267-3782. I'm sorry, y'all.
Yes, 267-3782. Yes, my question for the guest is, when he say 24/7, is that written out or is it in numbers? That's the first question.
It's in numbers now.
Okay, so you put 24-7 or /7 or what?
No, just 247worldradio.com. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, the other question I had in reference to making comments about the picture, now we know there's enough technology that's out here that you can make something look like it's not. So that's one thing about the picture. But I think that would benefit the most is to have Farrakhan, in all fairness, to come on and he make a comment as if he was truly there and if he truly kissed the Pope's ring. And then the last question that I have sort of relates to the guest that you had the other day, Jonah, with last names, first names. When you're doing these documents, how do you see putting, help me, Yusef, if I'm not saying it right, putting the last name first and then the first name
and then the middle name, I think last, is the order that Jonah was speaking about yesterday. Is that correct? And Mr. Phelps, does that mean anything to you, and does it make a difference?
No, that's what they do to us. That's what they do to us. That's our slave name. What we have to do is use our first name and last name. Your first name is your name, and your last name is your family name, your surname. And so that's how you're going to use it. And don't reverse it. But they put our last name first. They put the entity's last name first, and then the first name. No, that's their system. We were taught to write our name, first name, last name, and so that's your name, and at the common law, and so that's what you'll use. By the way, just as another fact here, I'm dealing with a certain credit card issue now, and the bank sent me a letter, sent the entity a letter, Eric John Phelps, all capital letters. And it was my process to say that I'm not surety anymore for this entity, and you prove that I am, and so on. A 3-part process to get administrative default. And after the first letter, they send me this letter, send the entity the letter, all caps name, and then it says, to the estate of Eric Phelps. And the word estate is capitalized, and Eric Phelps is in all small letters. So I'm convinced that the all lowercase letters is the private American citizen that's surety for the all caps commercial entity. So there's 3 ways to spell the name that you have. And the black gentleman will be in my course. It says there's 4 ways. So I think that it'd be interesting to hear that one too.
So is 4 ways to spell it correctly? Is that what you're saying? Or
4 ways. 4 ways. Yeah, 4 ways that the spelling that they have used, the all caps name that they created, the all lowercase name that they created, and your name that's yours. And then there's one other way, which I'm interested to talk with him about, because when you file certain commercial documents, you have to have all 4 names on it.
Okay. I see. Now, one last question, no disrespect to you. When you were saying about being separate and having separate nations, I just want to know, why wouldn't the European nations want to return to their part of the continent?
To this continent or to Europe?
Yes, to the continent of Europe. Yes.
Well, I don't want to go to Europe. Europe's all Roman Catholic. For most people. Europe's destroyed my people. Europe's destroyed white South Africa.
I just wanted to ask what your response was going to be, but I thank you for your response. Yes, no disrespect for you. Thank you for being on the show. Thank you for sharing your information that you've shared with us. I deeply appreciate it.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Have a good day.
You too.
Well, excuse my laughter, but I think it's odd you said you don't want to go to Europe.
No, I don't. I want to have a portion somewhere here in North America for white people for their own nation. We bought in Pennsylvania, we bought every square foot from the natives, and now the Roman Catholics have taken over all the major cities, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Scranton, Harrisburg. They took it all. So I just want to have my own nation where we can have white people that are primarily, historically Protestant and Baptist and Calvinistic, so we can have our own geographic space to preserve our race, language, and culture, and it's based upon the Bible, because it's been destroyed in every country in the world. There is no longer a white Protestant nation in the world today. And I just want one back.
Well, why just can't everybody get along? We got to get along. The segregation is the desire for segregation is what manifested to begin with.
Separation, not segregation. It's separation. Okay, well, let me address that question. Why can't we all get along? I'll tell you why. Because when the Roman Catholic canon law calls for my death because I'm a heretic, because I refuse to submit to the temporal power of the Pope, how can I get along with those people? They want to kill me.
Until they start shooting at you.
You know that's coming because that's their doctrine. They set up a holy office of the Inquisition for 600 years for people like me. I don't want to live in the midst of the Inquisition, which today the Inquisition is the FBI.
Listen, I love you, and I think that you're going to aid me tremendously. However, we must have a conversation that allows success. So we can't discuss anything other than the transformation that we have to manifest in the people who will perpetrate the untoward violations of our human rights and our universal rights of existence. The claim of the Pope's authority to decide anything for anybody, he's just a man. His is all perceived. It's all perceived. We have to shatter that perception.
No. Oh, no, wait a second. You're talking semantics here. I'm talking about written canon law. I'm talking about the Summa Theologica of the ungodly Thomas Aquinas. When he writes in Summa Theologica, and I quote it in my book, that if the individual doesn't return to the fold of the Catholic Church after the second admonition, then let him be killed, because it's no murder to kill a heretic. That's canon law. That's what binds the papacy to do what they do. That's why they killed all those Indian children in Canada, some 50,000 of them. The Kevin Annett is made very public. That's why they engaged in the slave trade. The English involved in the slave trade were the Stuarts primarily. You have the Stuart dynasty conducting it with Charles II and James II, and they had a monopoly called the Royal African Company that controlled it all. It's the papes that are behind the slave trade. And if you want this story, you need to get the book. You may have read it. It's called The History of Slavery and the History of the Slave Trade and Slavery by W.O. Blake, written in 1860. It's about 1,000 pages, but it is the finest work. So as long as these things are in the doctrine of Rome, we cannot live with them. I can't live with Muslims. Their doctrine is that I'm an inferior. Sunni Islam is my enemy, because Sunni Islam is the agent for the Vatican. It was created by the Vatican. The Quran was written in the Vatican. And so therefore, Romanism uses Islam as its long arm to kill me and to persecute me. So I don't want Muslims in my country either. In fact, I don't want any Orthodox Jews in my country either, because according to their Noahide laws, when I worship the one true God, which includes the second person of the Godhead, the Lord Jesus Christ, I'm a blasphemer, and I should be put to death for that blasphemy. Any religious doctrine that calls for my death or persecution, anybody that believes that is not going to live in my country as a white man.
All right.
Okay.
So, how are you going to carve out this separated country? How are you going to?
How's it going to be done? Well, first of all, I'm calling for those who believe as I do to migrate somewhere here in Pennsylvania. You first have a migration. Just like many of the blacks have migrated to Atlanta, that's a good idea. So I'm going to have a migration up here and somewhere here in Pennsylvania in the middle of the state. Trusting God, and I make this a matter of prayer every day, because my business is prayer. So I seek the Lord earnestly and fervently in prayer that He would spare us, that we would not be totally consumed by this de facto military government, this martial law that's coming, and that we would also not be killed by the invading Chinese and the invading Russians and the invading Muslims. So I'm seeking God about it. God's going to have to do something. If He doesn't, I'm a dead man. So I seek the Lord about it, and He'll do it because He's able to. I believe the Lord Jesus Christ has all power in heaven and earth, and He commands all things. He's in charge of all things, and He can answer my prayers tonight.
So real quick, and then we're going to grab some more calls. So the reality of the golden rule, is that going to aid you in being able to cohabitate and coexist and co-interact with other people?
Why, of course, once we have our nation, we'll engage in trade and commerce. I tell my black brethren in Christ, I said, you need your own nation, and you need to border my nation. And so we can exchange goods that we create in commerce. And if the Pope sends out one of his armies, like the Russian army or the Chinese army or any of his armies, then we will unite together to fight the invader that comes to destroy our particular country. If it attacks the new black Bible-believing nation, then we will unite with them to help them repel the invader. So we can enter into treaties of amity, of friendship, and commerce, but we maintain our racial, linguistic, and cultural separation as we should pursuant to biblical maxims.
All right. Let me grab some calls. You still there?
Yep.
All right. 4179, you're on High Frequency Radio, like the chime in.
How you doing, Brother Paul? Brother Paul Savage, and to the guest. My thing is, I was hearing the caller was talking about Muslims. He was saying that Muslims are his enemy, and separation. To my understanding, the so-called black people was here before the Native Americans, and it was Muslims found it was here, and Muslims was responsible for the peace treaty in this country. So how all of a sudden
are you talking about the Treaty of Tripoli?
No, the Friendship Treaty. Before the George Washington was even, this country was even a country, it had to have Muslims to put up the gold and the finances from the Europeans that were escaped over here and became America in this country. And I understand that you want to be separate.
Yeah, I would have to see documentation of that because I've never heard of that before. So if you could send that to me,
I mean that's.
Hold on for a second. Hold on for a second. You never heard what? That the Aboriginal was here before Columbus? I don't understand what you mean. You never heard that before.
No, I don't. I've never heard that Muslim gold financed something here before George Washington. I've never heard that, and I would like some documentation on that.
The
Moroccan
Sultan Ibn Muhammad, and this country could not have been a country. Now I understand what you're saying. Okay, well you will look at the Friendship Treaty, and you will understand that Islam been here. I guess some people look at Islam as this and Islam. I'm a Muslim, and I came up my mother and them came up in the Nation of Islam, and we talk about separate. Everybody talking about separate, and you want for your people. But I hear our people on here still want to commingle. But it sounds like this is what you want to do with your people, and you have a right to separate yourself. So, really, what we see is you was born with privileges in this country. Even though we still don't have the same privilege, you have that privilege. Even though you may say the back, I understand, but what I'm saying is that you still have that privilege. When you get up in the morning,
privilege? What's my privilege?
What is your privilege? That you are not going to be treated like a criminal first.
Oh, of course I am. I've been to jail. I've been to jail with you guys. I've been a criminal. Yeah, I've been treated as such.
I understand that, but if you can't understand that you do have a lot of privilege. Look how people get the young Caucasian man killed 4 people and get on scot-free. Y'all still get privileges. If you was on the street corner and you was robbing me and I jump on you, the police going to shoot me first. Even if you have done something to me, he's coming after me first. Now, this is something that our people must understand, and it's not to jump on you or anything. I'm just making points. Our people wants to mix with you all, but you want to do your own thing. And there's nothing wrong with that.
No, the Nation of Islam wants to separate.
No,
the Nation of Islam wants to separate and have their own nation, right?
I'm not with the Nation of Islam. I'm a Muslim by nature, not by religion. I'm by nature.
So are you Sunni Muslim, Shia Muslim, or what kind?
I'm a Muslim by nature. I submit to the will of God, and that's all Islam means. I don't know about, we say all these Shiites, and I'm a Muslim by nature and not by religion. And another thing, I want to make one more statement. Let me ask you something. You say the Lord Jesus Christ, our people pray to Jesus Christ as a white European. Now, if it was the opposite, because they were saying that Jesus Christ was a dark man with blonde skin complexion, will you still want to pray to him, or will you put a black Jesus on your wall and pray to him?
Okay, well, let me help you with that. Lord Jesus Christ was not a white man. He was a Jew, and he was of the tribe of Judah. And so generally the tribe of Judah, the tribe of Judah are darker skinned. They're generally olive skinned and black hair. So the Roman Catholic Church wants everybody to believe with its images of Jesus, quote unquote, which is really Horus. It's not the Lord Jesus Christ. It's Horus of Egypt. That he has blonde hair, blue eyes, and a little cute little goatee, and he looks like a fag. No, that's not the true Lord Jesus Christ of the Scripture, and that's why the Vatican kills us when we preach the true Yeshua HaMashiach of the Scripture. They hate the Scriptures, and they hate those of us who preach it. So the Christ of Romanism and apostate Protestantism is not the true Christ of the Bible, because they depict him as some sort of long-haired, effeminate, blue-eyed man. And that's not who he was.
Okay, one other thing. Now, I see people judge people on religion, more so their personal belief, more so the character of a man or a woman. So I see that's how people get killed every day about they judge people on skin complexion more so than the character of a man or a woman. People do that all the time. They all do that. I mean,
well, blacks do it, whites do it. Everybody does it, unfortunately. But my point is well, let me finish. To resolve this problem, let's stop spending our money and time and effort and emotion. Let's just do what God wants us to do. Let's just racially separate into our own nations and devote all this effort and time and intellectual pursuit to the betterment of our peoples.
Let me ask you something. So if I'm a Muslim and I come to your class, are you going to disrespect me when I come to your class because you say you don't? Of course not. You say you don't like Muslims. You say you don't like Muslims.
I didn't say I didn't like Muslims. I said I don't like their doctrine.
And let's say this. What he said is that the Muslims declared him an enemy.
An infidel. I'm an infidel to them.
Right. So, but it's the same way we feel toward how the police declare us enemies of the state.
Okay. Look at these police. The vast majority. I spoke last year to a group in Cleveland. I would say maybe half of them were black, half of them were white. And there was this one dear fellow there, a black fellow his name was Wes, and he talked about this tyranny going on in the Cleveland Police Department with this particular girl. I said, is she Catholic? He said, she is. She's Irish Catholic. I said, the vast majority of these police departments are Roman Catholic. There's Knights of Columbus in them. And I'm telling you, the white Roman Catholic people hate black people. So
I know
you can expect this kind of thing. So therefore, what I believe you should be advocating is racial separation under nationhood. And you're going to get away from these white Roman Catholics.
I don't have any problem of separating. I feel that we should separate.
Absolutely.
I feel that we was more powerful separated anyway when we depend on ourselves and love one another better than we do now. And another thing is that when we talk about Muslims, you understand that Muslims also have protected Christians too in wars of time. So when you look at Muslims, sometimes people look at Muslims in general, but when you're dealing with Muslims or whatever, you got to look up as more so heritage, more so than the way of being a Muslim. Like if I'm born in another country, or I'm born in this country, or I'm born in this country, people adapt Islam according to culture and the way you was raised. And that's not the same thing.
No, we need to deal with doctrine. Do you subscribe to Surah 9? Do you believe Surah 9?
Surah 9?
Surah number 9.
Yeah, but you have to be able to read the Arabic. Just like it says, do not take Jews. It says, do not take Jews and Christians for a friend. But if you can read in Arabic, it says, do not let nobody dictate towards your religion. It doesn't say. It said in the English interpretation, but it doesn't say do not. It says do not take Jews and Christians as your friends. But that's not what it says in the Arabic. It says do not let no one dictate you towards your religion. That's just like you trying to tell me my religion, and that's all the thing. If you can read the Arabic.
It's a matter of history that when Jews and I would say Bible-believing Christians lived in Muslim nations, they were all second-class citizens, and they paid a special, what is it called, guinea tax or something. They were second-class citizens. Islam doesn't believe in equality. Not for me.
Islam don't do what?
It doesn't believe in equal status for me.
Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, has defended Christian people and Jews people living under his, when he was there as a leader and a prophet, he made sure that the Jews and Christians was not crucified or anything else.
But they were still submitted to him. And by the way, they did kill Jews. Muhammad killed Jews. He killed a couple of cultures.
In the Quran, it says he appeared to be crucified, but he wasn't. He appeared to be crucified, but he wasn't.
But my point being, the doctrine submits me to Islam if Islam is a religion of the state.
You got a lot of things. In the Bible, it says if you do not believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, you cannot go to heaven. So everybody wants to say things the way they were. As Muslims, we do, but we don't believe in Jesus as God, but as a prophet to the Creator. And that's all. And you couldn't even be a Muslim if you didn't believe in Jesus and his teaching.
Yeah, but you see, but the Jesus of Islam is not the Jesus of the Bible. They've reduced the true Lord Jesus Christ of the Scripture to a mere prophet and a mere man. And that's the spirit of the Antichrist.
Let me ask you one thing, and I'm going to let you go. But when you see, when people, the problem with everybody want to see God as a man like their color and put their hands on him. That's how everybody wants to view God. They want to be able to put their hands on him, see him eye to eye, face to face, teeth to teeth.
But you see, that's idolatry. That's idolatry. The Bible's clear. I'm not to make any graven image. I'm not to have any pictures. That's all. In fact, I'm not to wear that goofy-looking cross. That's all idolatry.
I know, but when you close your eyes, you picture him as a man image, don't you?
He's some kind of a man, but he's not a white man.
So you picture him as that. I mean,
I don't picture him as that.
His name really ain't Jesus because before 1960 it wasn't no J in the Hebrew religion anyway.
Well,
so
you would say his name Yeshua in Hebrew, but for English-speaking peoples, we put a J in like Jerusalem instead of Jerusalem, or Jesus instead of Yeshua. I understand that.
And the original people over there in Israel,
my point.
They're not the true descendant of Israel anyway. The Jews over there now, they are colonizing Jews.
I would have to disagree. That's another topic.
They're from the origin of Georgia.
No, they're not Khazarians. They're racial Jews. There's no genes in them of Khazarian genes. There's no Khazarian syllables in the Yiddish language. So
that's another topic. And it's not a people, it's just a religion.
No. The Jews are a race. No, they're a race of people, and the Scripture calls them the holy seed.
And that land was taken from them in 1932. They was put over there. That wasn't even their land.
All right.
All right,
brother. Let me grab some more calls, all right?
Okay. All right. Take care.
Thank you. Eric.
Yes.
What you asked about? You said something about the Treaty of Tripoli. What's your position on the Treaty of Peace and Friendship and the Treaty of Tripoli?
The Treaty of Tripoli was entered into by the U.S. government. I believe John Adams signed it.
What's the first treaty entered into by the U.S. government?
I'm not sure, but with regard to the Treaty of Tripoli, after the war there, the treaty says that the United States did not have a Christian government. Okay, and I just want to clarify something there. Of course, we didn't have a Christian government because church wasn't united with state. The Great Baptist First Amendment prevented that from happening. So this was indeed a new world order where there was a nation founded where the religion was not wedded to the state, unlike Protestantism and Roman Catholicism and Islam. So the Treaty of Tripoli stated that the United States was not a Christian government, but it was most assuredly composed of a Christian people that were, for the most part, Protestant. At the time of the American Revolution, there was 3 million people here. There was 3 million people. 2.5 million were historic white Protestants and Baptists. 500,000 were blacks, and there were 30,000 Roman Catholics, and there were 24 priests. But this country at the time of the American Revolution was most assuredly white Protestant and Baptist because we've been driven here by the Inquisitions and the auto de fe and the murders of the papists in Europe for 200 years.
All right. Well, and what's your position about the Treaty of Peace and Friendship?
I'm not aware of it. I'd have to take a look at it because I've
You're not aware of the oldest treaty that the U.S. holds with any foreign nation?
No. If you could send that to me or scan an email, or you can send it to my address, I appreciate that.
Have you heard of the Avalon Project from Yale University?
I've heard of it, but I don't know the details.
All right. Well, I can. I'll get your email from Yusef unless you'd like to give it to me now.
Sure. Eric, ERIC at 247 worldradio.com.
All right. Thank you, Eric.
Oh, you're welcome.
Let me see. We grab a couple more calls. You got a few more minutes?
Sure.
All right. 1759. You're on High Frequency Radio. Like to chime in? Caller 1759. All right. Caller 1342. 1342. You're on High Frequency Radio. Like to chime in?
Hey, can you hear me?
Sure can.
Hello? Yes. Oh, my God, I can't believe this. Look, I got a whole bunch to say, so I'm going to try to say it quick. I'm in Indiana territory, and I respect you, Brother Yusef. I learned so much in the last 4 or 5 shows. I just want to listen. But on this thing about the Pope and this thing about Farrakhan and the thing about the 14th Amendment, I'm going to try to tie it all in. From my studies and my opinion, that 14th Amendment, from what I understood, is the documents that I got, that the 14th Amendment never been properly ratified because the rebellious sect that killed Abraham Lincoln wanted to punish the South and wanted to, let me see how I put it. They make everybody a citizen, but they wanted to reduce the people to all paupers or slaves. So they came up with that 14th Amendment to make them a fictitious entity. But the interesting thing is that they didn't want to admit to the debt that the North owed the South for the property of them giving up their property in this law called Emancipation Proclamation. Now, my other studies brought me to a 13th Amendment with 20 sections, which was ratified by Abraham Lincoln. It came into law. It's the law of the land. And as Mr. Phelps say, that this federal de facto government, they came up with what they wanted to come up with, and they didn't express this to the people, or the people don't know about this. Now, what significance that 13th Amendment with the 20 section is, it talks about colonization, compensation, and to take care of the slaves at the time of the Emancipation Proclamation. But, Brother Yusef, as you know, our ancestors back then couldn't even read. So the Frederick Douglass so-called delegation had literally sold us out. So we didn't have nobody there to really express our interest at that. Let me get on this Farrakhan thing. I don't understand why everybody's tripping about this Farrakhan. Honorable Elijah Muhammad told them about Farrakhan when he said, look up his name and how his name is spelled. So they need to do that for one thing. Two, if Allah is God and came in the person of Master Farad Muhammad, and Honorable Elijah Muhammad, peace and blessings of God will be upon him, gave us everything we needed in the lessons, the theology of time, with the subliminal subjection that we had succumbed under this European power, all the things that was hidden inside our subconscious mind. Now, with that saying that and the actual facts, I mean, it's a whole bunch of stuff that we needed as a nation under Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Farrakhan knows about this. Then why would Farrakhan go and just take and go to Scientology when you had when you had a Sophia Stewart on and she explained how the Scientologists with the judges and the money in the slush fund, how they literally just ripped her off. Now the Scientology people are trying to get into the African American community to continue this work that Mr. Phelps really just explained the whole plan behind the Scientologists just in another name. So I know I'm babbling because it ain't that much time, but I sure wish I had more time to express myself. But what I'm saying is the Honorable Noah Drew Ali back in the day told him that the European Caucasians were going to come out and tell us the truth, share it with us, but we might have to be, like you say, Brother Yusef, with an open mind, be scholarly with this work so we can get it done. And I love this conversation today because I'm at peace with myself. And there's so much truth in this conversation that y'all had today. I'm literally almost in tears, man, because the prophecy come true. Now, one more thing, Brother Yusef and Mr. Phelps. The word Muslim and the word Muslim has two distinct different definitions. The Muslim is the derivative of Arabic influence to say entire submission to do the will of God, which, on the contrary, you don't have to submit to do the will of God because your very being, your essence is of the Creator, and the Creator is in you, you in the Creator. The Muslim, the word Muslim has nothing to do with that. The word Muslim is dealing with a fetus that has muscles, that has veins, and electricity. It's a living entity that the Creator created on this side of the sun. So for my brother who was talking about Muslim this and Muslim that, I want him to open up his mind and go study what those two words mean and understand what's taking place. Now, as far as the heretic, Brother Phelps is talking about that they want to kill him because basically of what he think and how he believes, you can't put that under the true Islam, but you can put that up under the Islam that came out of the Vatican. And yes, the Quran was written in the Vatican, and a whole lot of Muslim brothers don't want to hear that, but it's the truth. Matter of fact, all three of those major books that's been done there. Huh?
Yeah, they don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that.
But I know it's the truth though, and it can be documented. Walter Williams, he does a splendid job of breaking that down about Muhammad and Jesus and the Quran and the history and the historical reality of both of those religions. But I want to say to you, Yusef, you are a straight blessing to the total human family, man. You remind me of Imam Wafi Muhammad so much that you give everybody a chance to express themselves. And I thank my son for putting me on to this because that European that just spoke out, he gave us some golden keys. He gave us some keys. All we got to do is put our mind on it and go ahead and fulfill the prophecy. And we're going to have this land. And the Europeans, those who ain't going to act right, they are going to go back to Europe. And law, land, air, and water will prevail. And our law is the true Allah, and that's what the truth is, and that's what they're not teaching us. Peace, Brother Yusef. Peace, Brother Phelps.
We're blessed, President, to hear you.
Peace, my brother. This is Savage L, and peace. Thanks for calling in. Thanks for listening.
All right.
All right, my brother. Brother Phelps, I got one more call.
Okay.
Let's grab it. Oh, wait a minute. Let's see if we can grab it. 1111. You're on High Frequency Radio. Like to chime in?
Peace.
Peace.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, peace. Mm-hmm.
Peace. Wow, after what my man just said, I don't even know where to go, but I will say this. Mr. Phelps, you are on point. The Quran is something that the Vatican put together. But I had one quick question to ask you. When I first chimed in, I heard y'all speaking on the different ways to write your name. What I would like to know from you is what is a surname?
Surname is your last name.
Okay,
like,
but what is a surname?
Surname is the family name.
Okay, well, knowing that family means a house of servants, family means a house of slaves. So I wouldn't even want to use those terms. But what I'm going to say is this. Knowing that a surname designates your occupation, your estate, your place of residence, or some particular thing or event that related to the person, I comprehend that the surname is what we call an appellation, which is a common name. And due to the fact that the surname designated an estate, that's what that really is, the estate. And I heard, like I said, I chimed in kind of late. I heard you speaking upon how, we're enslaved and so on and so forth. But in my opinion, that's the main problem. People don't comprehend that a surname is really what have them enslaved. It ties you to someone else's estate. Me, myself, I done stopped using a surname, a last name. Everybody only says it's a last name, not comprehending what that really means. All right, your first and your middle name is what you were giving. No matter what, that so-called surname, last name was going to be a part of you, which is a common name, which is a brand, which is a label. So I just wanted to put that out there. Me, myself, I don't use a surname because I comprehend what that does. And when I'm in a situation now, we're going to a court or something, I let it be known that the surname, that's, I'm kin to that estate because that's what that represents. And I know we don't have that much time, so I'm not going to really get into what I really wanted to say, but I will try to contact you. Your area code 610, is that of Pennsylvania? You are in Pennsylvania?
Yes. Pennsylvania, yes.
Okay. Well, I will try to talk to you privately, but you are on point. All people have to do is read Morals and Dogma by Albert Pike.
That's correct.
They comprehend that, to know that, Islam or the Quran is something made up by the Vatican, so they can get ready to do what they're doing now. They so-called World War III or, whatever they're attempting or whoever's attempting. But that was it. I just wanted to speak on that because people don't know what a surname is. People don't comprehend that is their appellation because that's a thing. And I have a blessed peace.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Okay, is everybody there or somebody there?
Yeah, I'd like to thank you on behalf of the producer, Yusef, on behalf of the listeners. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your information that you shared and your openness. And I look forward to speaking with...
Thank you for having me on. And thank you for the listeners who are interested enough to listen and call. Appreciate it.
All right. And now, one last time before you go, you have a site and classes or a website or something? Why don't you get the information out one more time before you go?
Yeah, you can go to my website, 247worldradio.com. And if you go there, you'll see the things that I offer for sale. And one of the things is my course, $1,750 for all day Friday and all day Saturday, which is 10 hours a day. There's 2 large 3-ring binders that you'll get with all the information. And the individuals that will be there, at least this time, will be most interesting for those who want to attend. I have 2 more spaces. I don't teach any more than 6 people at a time. So you might want to think about that. And, of course, I teach it every month, and I'll be posting the dates as each month comes around. I also have broadcasts, 10 to 12 every day. I preach the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ and expose the Jesuit order. And that's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 10 to 12. And you can listen to all my previous broadcasts if you go to my website, and you will be able to find under listening options. Go down, click here, and then the past shows will come up under EJP1, EJP2. I have another brother there, Fernando. He has a broadcast, and then I have another guy, Nico, in Europe. He preaches and exposes the Jesuits in Dutch and in German. So if anybody speaks Dutch and German, they'll enjoy Nico's broadcast. So that's my website. Things I offer for sale there might be interesting to anyone. By the way, I have a dear black lady friend in Christ who wrote a book on Martin Luther King. And the name of the book is called King, Was He a False Prophet? And the lady's name is Erin Fraser. and I sold a book on my website, and hopefully I'll have her on the broadcast. Maybe you guys want to have her on the broadcast sometime. So that's offered for sale on my website, too.
All right. All right, thank you very much, John Phelps. I appreciate you.
Okay, I appreciate you, too, and I appreciate you having me on.
Look forward to speaking with you soon, all right?
Okay, sounds good. So,
right.
Thank you, Yusef, for having me on, too. And Lord bless you.
All right, you be well and flourish.
Okay, bye-bye.
Peace. All right, y'all, on behalf of my producer, Yusef L., this is Savage L. thanking our guests for being on, thanking our listeners for participating, and we look forward to speaking and sharing with you again on so-called Monday. All right, so we'll see you all, talk with you all on Monday. Peace.